Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a special Tuesday matinee edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dibular, of course.
Hello.
What's up? Did you change your shirt in the break? Yeah, you did, right? Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's been one of those days. Up at the crack of dawn, doing segments, doing research.
That's right. I changed
like
mine
broadcast
too.
News up in this bitch.
I put on a new layer. It's pretty chilly.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. It is pretty chilly.
I was going to wear the Pliskin shirt. I couldn't find it in time. I realized I was wearing the same shirt from the other day at the last minute. And I also
that's right.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't have my. Because I was sleeping in it. I also don't have my phone. So yeah, I might bounce when you're doing super chats to go get my phone.
Oh, yeah, that'll be kind of an adventure. Doing the show without the phone. That's kind of weird, especially since we are, of course, everybody awaiting potentially breaking news. Obviously, a huge news day. A news day 15 months in the making. So there is a lot to talk about, even if official news of a ceasefire does not
Michael
break.
Rappaport is about to announce his transition.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. So even if official news of a ceasefire does not break over the course of this broadcast, which it very well could, for all we know, we still have a lot to talk about on that front. And so obviously that's the banner segment. We are going to cover the ceasefire developments a bit later in the stream in case we are hit with bombshell breaking news between now and then. Of course, that's good reason for Russ to have his phone on him, which maybe he'll jump out and grab that during the break. But we do have some news to get to start the afternoon. Some news on the Julian Assange front, which we always like to cover whenever it breaks. So, Russell, why don't we get into that?
All right. So Stella tweeted out an article. UK courts close in on cover-up of gross misconduct in Starmer's handling of Assange case. So while everybody's looking at grooming gangs, which whatever you think about Starmer, we don't think much about him, doesn't really seem to have been something that he was responsible for. Here's something he is responsible for. I hope Elon is going to tweet about this as much as he has about 10-year-old groomer gang.
Well, you'd think
cases.
he would. Free speech champion and all that he is.
Free speech champion that he is. I'm sure he's going to get right on this. A judge threatens to break UK's wall of secrecy around Assange's persecution. After 9 years of legal battles, a British judge has finally challenged the wall of secrecy erected by British and Swedish authorities around the legal abuse of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Judge Foss, sitting at the London First Tier Tribunal, has ruled that the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, must explain how it came to destroy key files that would have shed light on why it pursued Assange for 14 years. The CPS appears to have done so in breach of its own procedures. A lot of that going around. Assange was finally released from Belmarsh High Security Prison last year in a plea deal after Washington had spent years seeking his extradition for publishing documents revealing U.S. and U.K. war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. The CPS files relate to lengthy correspondence between the UK and Sweden over a preliminary investigation into rape allegations in Sweden that predate the U.S. extradition case. A few CPS emails from that time were not destroyed and have been released under Freedom of Information rules. They show that it was the UK authorities pushing reluctant Sweden prosecutors to pursue the case against Assange. Eventually, Swedish prosecutors dropped the case after running it into the ground. In other words, the few documents that have come to light show that it was the CPS, led at that time by Keir Starmer, later knighted, and now Britain's Prime Minister, that waged what appears to have been a campaign of political persecution against Assange rather than one based on proper legal considerations. It is not just Britain concealing documents relating to Assange. Take that down. The U.S., Swedish, and Australian authorities have also put up what Stefania Morizzi, an Italian journalist who has been doggedly pursuing the FOIA requests, has called a wall of darkness. There are good grounds for believing that all four governments have coordinated their moves to cover up what would amount to legal abuses in the Assange case. Starmer headed the CPS when many highly suspect decisions regarding Assange were made. If the documents truly have been destroyed, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to ever know how directly he was involved in those decisions. Extraordinarily and conveniently for both the UK and Sweden, it emerged during legal hearings in early 2023 that prosecutors in Stockholm claim to have destroyed the very same correspondence deleted by the CPS. Okay, so that's clearly criminal coordination. That's a criminal conspiracy. See, this is part of why people have lost all faith in institutions, because no one's going to jail for this, right? You should go to jail for it. If me and Keaton could be proven to have destroyed government records that by law are supposed to be preserved, and we coordinated our destruction, we'd go to jail, right? These people won't go to jail. They get knighted. You used to be to get knighted, you had to find the Holy Grail. Now what do you have to do? Railroad journalists to get a knightship now? The new ruling by Judge Foss will require the CPS to explain how and why it destroyed the documents and provide them unless it can demonstrate that there is no way they can ever be retrieved. Failure to do so by February 21st will be treated as contempt of court. The UK and the US have similarly sought to stonewall separate FOIA requests from Morizzi concerning their lengthy correspondence, while Washington sought to extradite Assange on espionage charges for revealing their war crimes. The British judiciary approved locking Assange up for years while the extradition case dragged on, despite United Nations legal experts ruling that Assange was being arbitrarily detained, and the UN's expert on torture, Niles Meltzer, finding that Assange was being subjected to prolonged psychological torture that posed a threat to his life. Now, this is not the first story like this to break. This is back in June 2023. This is before Starmer became prime minister. And already there was reporting, of course, not in the corporate media, but independent outlets were already reporting U.S. records show Starmer met with AG Eric Holder and a host of American and British national security officials in Washington in 2011 when he was in charge of Julian Assange's proposed extradition to Sweden. So just briefly, some of the main points in this article. Starmer was in Washington 3 times while in charge of Assange's proposed extradition to Sweden. Starmer led a 5-person British delegation that met with Holder for 45 minutes in Washington in November 2011. Delegation included the UK liaison prosecutor to the U.S., who dealt with extradition. Meeting was also attended by head of U.S. Department of Justice's National Security Division. CPS refuses to clarify to declassified. Destruction of the Washington documents is routine procedure, whether it is. The CPS, England and Wales's public prosecutor, has deleted all records of its former head Keir Starmer's trips to the U.S. It can be revealed. Starmer served as Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, from 2008 to 13, a period when the body was overseeing Julian Assange's proposed extradition to Sweden to face questioning over sexual assault allegations. While DPP Starmer made trips to Washington in 2009, 2011, 2012, and 2013 at a cost to the British taxpayer of £21,603. It was his most frequent foreign destination while in post. Max Hill, the current DPP, has made just one trip to Washington during his 5-year tenure. During Starmer's time in post, the CPS was marred by irregularities surrounding the case of the WikiLeaks founder. The organization has admitted to destroying key emails related to the Assange case, mostly covering the period when Starmer was in charge, while the CPS lawyer overseeing the case advised the Swedes in 2010 or 2011 not to visit London to interview Assange. An interview at that time could have prevented the long-running embassy standoff. Okay, so you literally had Starmer's office telling the Swedish prosecutors not to come interview the suspect and only to focus on pursuing the case and extraditing Assange. And clearly there has been a coordinated effort around this, and it really becomes clear when you look at both of these stories together that all of these countries are coordinating to destroy evidence. Now, is Elon going to tweet about this? Every day I look at social media, there's more about labor perverts, right? I would love to hear something about this, because it sounds like with this, you've got really solid evidence on Starmer himself.
Yeah. Well, definitely he is obviously, pardon me, personally implicated in this. We always knew that the charges against him were political. To me, the big revelation here is that a judge is going to look into this, and that we actually might get more answers into who specifically knew what and when. And yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this was a criminal conspiracy against a journalist for the crime of doing journalism.
Right.
That was pretty obvious from day one. And we always kind of assumed that we would, take that knowledge with us wherever we go, but that, even after the plea deal was struck and he was thankfully freed last year, we didn't really expect to have any real, accountability for what was done to him. But I certainly hope there is, and this is certainly the first step towards that, which is a good sign. It's a good sign that, nature is healing in some ways, at least.
In some ways it is. In some ways it is. Remember, this is something that transpired across multiple administrations. I think you can really see the difference between the Obama and Trump administrations and the way they handled this. It sounds like the Obama administration didn't want to be held responsible for persecuting a journalist, so they collaborated to try to get Sweden to bring him up on these what looked like bogus assault charges. Trump just tried to have him whacked. Pompeo tried to whack Assange, so he was not any better. Will Trump come in and issue a full pardon? I don't think so. He wouldn't do it the first time. He's not going to do it this time.
I would not expect that. But, like I said, I do think,
is Kash Patel going to release the files from this?
Well, that's another question. Yeah. No, I mean, look, this is a step one. Obviously, I think, Julian Assange should sue the governments of both the UK and the US. I think there's a great case to be made.
And Sweden. Fuck Sweden.
And Sweden, too. I think he should sue everybody at some point, but, take it step by step. And this is certainly a good first step in that direction, because not only should he be pardoned because he committed no crime ever, he shouldn't have had to take a plea deal. We're obviously glad he did and glad he's free. That's obviously first priority, right? But yeah, I mean, he should pursue some sort of payback. I mean, they tortured this guy for 5 years in prison, and that was after detaining him wrongfully on what were clearly bogus, politically trumped up charges from day one. There was never any case against him at all, ever, on any fronts. Not on the Espionage Act charges and not on these sexual assault charges, which were pretty obviously drummed up for political purposes since they were brought. I mean, that was pretty obvious.
Well, and look at the chilling effect this has had on journalism, because WikiLeaks was pointing to a future where you can't keep government secrets anymore. When was the last time you saw that kind of an info dump from any outlet?
Exactly. So it definitely hurt the public as well. It wasn't just a crusade against Assange and against WikiLeaks, but as intended, it ended up having the effect of depriving the public of very necessary information, the amount of which we'll never know what we missed out on because of that. So yeah, there's definitely a case against these people. There should definitely be payback through the legal system where the case is open and shut. And so this is step one. We hope one of many. All right, cool. Do you want to run and get your phone while I take some super chats?
All right, let me just adjust this a little
Just
bit.
careful, but dudes.
It's a little, ow, I see. That's why. There we go.
There we go. All right, Russell will be right back. Hey, thanks everybody for being here. 1,100 strong in the YouTube chat to start the show. 754 over on Rumble. Great to see all you folks here today. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $10 over on YouTube. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I was released from jury duty this morning. Beautiful. I'm having lunch at El Charro Cafe. It's the oldest Mexican restaurant in Tucson. It's been open since 1922. The chicken skirt steak fajita combo is fire. That does sound pretty good. That sounds pretty good, Michael, and congratulations on being released from jury duty. That's a win. Michael Castillo, thanks to the other $5 here. Yes, Gabby Giffords was shot at the Safeway Shopping Center at the intersection of Oracle Road and Inya Road, January 8th, 2011, by Jared Lochmer. Is that where the restaurant is? Is that what people are asking in the chat? Posmo, thanks for the $10. Hey, boys, are you ready to say you might have been a little mistaken about Trump and his approach to Israel? It was obvious to me Trump would end the Gaza BS before his inauguration. Well, we are getting to that, Posmo. We are getting to that in due time. Do not worry. We are not going anywhere before we get to that. Okay, let's see. What do we got here? Eric Rousseau. So some Ukrainian generals' mansions and a BLM grifter's 2 of 3 mansions burned up in L.A. Is that true? Is that true? I did not know that. That is news to me, Eric Rousseau. Once a week, says Hillary Hitton, you guys should do a throwback story highlighting one of the bricks in the wall for our current dystopia. First nomination, the 2007 Don't Tase Me Bro incident. Yeah, I like the idea of flashback segments. We were going to start doing that, actually. It did well. Regular flashback segment. Yeah, they do well.
You did like that Hitchens thing, right?
We did the Hitchens. I mean, we did them as they came up, as they were relevant. But we considered making like a flashback thing a regular fixture of the show, like every few episodes, like once a week to pick a weekday and do that as part of it. Something we might think about. Pick something old that's relevant to what's new. All right, you got your phone in hand? Ready to go? All right, now we're ready for the alerts.
Boom.
Now we're ready for the updates. All right, now we'll see what else comes in between now and the ceasefire segment. All right, folks. Let me get our logo back up here. Beautiful. There's been a lot of talk about the cause of the wildfires out in Los Angeles and, of course, the city and state's response to the wildfires. CNN wanted to break down some polling data about Americans' opinions on climate change and wildfires, incidentally. So, breaking, says Eric Doherty, Americans do not blame wildfires on climate change. So we're going to watch this segment where they break down some data and react to it, and then we'll explore this a little bit more.
I don't think Americans are making this connection. And the way we can see this in right here and now, take a look at the monthly change in Google searches. Look at the searches for wildfire, up 2,400%. My goodness gracious, this is the most amount of people searching for wildfires ever, going back since Google Trends began back in 2004. But look at climate change. Look at the change. It doesn't go hand in hand with wildfires. It's actually down. It's down 9%.
Now, to be fair, we would not expect it to go hand in hand. We wouldn't expect it to be up 2,400%, but you would expect it to be up more than negative 9% for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I also looked in California. There has been no increase in the number of searches for climate change. So the bottom line is this. Americans are definitely interested in learning about these wildfires. They're interested in following the news about the wildfires, but they are not making that connection with climate change. That's the bottom line.
That's a really key metric you're looking at there, the connection. Overall,
really animated.
Americans being worried about climate change. What have we seen over time?
Yeah, you know, we have seen a lot of extreme weather events over the last few decades, right? Hurricanes, heat waves, wildfires. You might expect that Americans worry about climate change with climate change worry a lot. You go back to 1991, it was 35%. Now, it was a little bit higher in 2007, a little bit higher in 2022. But look at this. In 2023, the last time we have data, 39%. That is not statistically significantly different from this 35% back in 1991. So despite all these extreme weather events, Americans are really no more worried about climate change than they were, what is that, now nearly 35 years ago? I mean, there's just no real trend line here, Mr. Berman.
So the question is why?
Why? Why are they not really worried a lot about climate change? It might be because they feel like there's not a whole heck of a lot they can do. So climate change, humans contribute a great deal. Again, there's no real trend line here over the last few years. 2019, 49%, 2020, 49%, 2023, 46%, 2024, 45%. That's actually down 4 points from where we were back in 2019. And so less than a majority of Americans believe that humans contribute a great deal to climate change. So the bottom line is that is a big reason why they don't worry a lot. They just don't feel like they can do anything about it.
So the trend line is going down, even as scientists say that the intensity of these storms and these conditions are getting worse.
Even as the extreme weather goes up, humans are not exactly as worried about climate change as they necessarily once were.
Harriet?
Yeah, and there really is not much of a trend line at all. Really, the story.
That was the worst segment ever made by humans.
Right.
Okay, so I slipped into, as I was watching this, because, you know, it's a blah, 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 blah. I started watching it as somebody who does news reading in front of a mic, and I'm watching the craft of what they're doing. You know, like, all right, so you stand there by the board and you're just kind of going to bounce off him. You know, that was the kind of direction that they got. And his job is to be very animated to make this seem interesting to the audience. So he's pushing out a lot of energy. And he's got some kind of Northeastern accent, which usually the people they put on air have gotten rid of that. The main guy who was driving it. And then you have the slightly older authority figure there bouncing off of him, playing the straight man while he's bouncing off the walls about the statistics. That is a tough gig, man. That is a tough gig. I don't think I could do that one.
Well, the takeaway there is that there has been a complete failure to move the needle on this issue over the last 30 some odd years. Because, you know, he talks about, well, we went from 35% up to 41% to 43% to 39%. Over the course of 30 years, you're talking about essentially no progress being made on that issue in terms of raising people's awareness or making it an increased priority to people. If anything, even among Democrats, as you can see, belief in climate change increases now from 2017 to now, but belief in human-driven climate change down among Democrats 5 points from 2017. And part of why this is a dog that will not hunt, despite people's thinking that as storms become more severe, people are going to start taking this more seriously, is precisely because, in my view, largely, that the people who have been trying to raise the alarm over this issue are the same people who have proven themselves just completely unserious about solving every problem that they claim is so serious. When you look at healthcare, that was the big one. Barack Obama came in with a mandate to solve the healthcare problem. Well, what do we have now? 68,000 people a year dying because they don't have the proper health insurance or because they cannot afford medicine. That's actually up slightly from pre-Obamacare levels, when it was about 55,000 a year. Look at the minimum wage. The same party that talks about evening the playing field, right, for workers, and it's not fair that CEOs make so many more times the amount of money that their workers do. That's the same party that allows the Senate parliamentarian to kill a minimum wage increase. Now, on this issue itself, here's Nancy Pelosi in 2020. America can no longer afford to deny the connection between the climate crisis and the wildfires. Here she is talking about California wildfires just 4 years ago.
Can no longer afford to deny the connection between the climate crisis and the wildfires. No longer be in contempt of the science that tells us why these storms battering the Gulf Coast are so severe. Severest in history, and the one that hit Louisiana, and now they haven't. Sally coming back. They told me that they're running out of names. They may have to go to the Greek alphabet to name the storms.
Okay. Now, just a year prior to that, of course, this was the very famous rebuke of AOC. Nancy Pelosi just threw some serious shade at AOC's Green New Deal. So if you look at this, this was dated February 8th, 2019. This is just after the squad took office because they had won in the 2018. That was AOC winning her primary. Thursday is a big day for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The New York freshman Democrat, who has rapidly become one of the biggest stars in her party, will formally introduce her much-touted Green New Deal, a package of legislation aimed at, among other things, addressing the threat posed by climate change. Nancy Pelosi isn't all that impressed. Asked about the Green New Deal in an interview with Politico on Wednesday, Pelosi dropped this amazing bit of shade on it. It will be one of several or maybe many suggestions that we receive, the Green Dream, or whatever they call it. Nobody knows what it is, but they're for it, right? Okay, so if you're going to be that dismissive of a sort of New Deal with sustainability in mind, and then you're going to blame fires on climate change a year later, and then you're going to continue to kneecap any sort of progressive movement with an environmental focus. Well, at a certain point, people are going to make the connection, not necessarily that climate change is not real. Like I said, most people, according to the data, think that it is. Most Republicans think that it is. 62%. Independents, 75%. Now, when you talk about human-driven climate change, the reason that number drops is because the people who are selling it to you as a problem that needs solving not only are not serious about solving this problem, they're not serious about solving any problem. And the pattern here is that whether it comes to climate, whether it comes to healthcare, whether it comes to labor, the ethos of the Democratic Party, especially the new Democratic Party, the post-1980 Democratic Party, but really it was true of prior incarnations of the party itself, is that struggles against these sorts of ills can be achieved while maintaining capitalism. They insist that we can reconcile capitalism with a sort of Green New Deal, if you will, or healthcare reform, or labor empowerment. And the truth is, you can't. And so people observe, and not everybody, I don't think, arrives at this conclusion consciously, but people observe that if the ruling class is going to put capital and money interests ahead of these issues, then we better do that too. Because otherwise you're talking about, well, we're going to disarm on our side. Well, if they're not going to disarm, then they're just going to trample us. Because if they put concerns of finance and money and power above solving these problems, and if we don't do the same thing, we're just going to get railroaded, and the problem's not going to be solved, and we're just going to be worse off. And the climate change issue is a good example of that, because this is an example that is abstract to begin with. It's hard enough for people to wrap their heads around to begin with, because there's not an immediate direct dollars and cents component to it. But this is relevant totally across the board, where the people who told you these problems are serious have proven to be completely unserious about solving them in any serious way. And so there you have it. Not a surprise.
Yeah, well, this is why every year when they meet at Davos to talk about climate change and bug cuisine, the future of insect hot cuisine, everybody counts up how many private jets they took there.
Right.
Now, if you're serious about this, even as a symbolic gesture, if you really gave a shit about persuading the public, wouldn't you make a point of having all these billionaires fly coach? Right? Just do it. If you want to lead by example, if you don't want to launch thousands of videos about the Davos hypocrites, why wouldn't you do that? Because they don't really give a shit. Because they assume no matter what happens on this planet, their toes are going to be tapping. Nuclear war, they got bunkers, climate change. If certain kinds of foods aren't available, they'll be available to them. Right. And that's really what you see, the backlash against it whenever they start talking about these things. It really reads as an aristocratic class saying, one rule for thee, another rule for me. So yes, of course, people are saying, I'm not going to make sacrifices that the people telling me to make these sacrifices won't make themselves. And as you point out, if you will not produce a solution to this problem that in any way affects capital, and that's really what Davos is all about. It's all about offering solutions that don't affect them, that don't affect their class. People are essentially, I believe, idealistic. Look at how, after 9/11, what was the collective reaction? People who wanted to do service jobs, people who wanted to become teachers exploded. The percentage of people who wanted to do more community-oriented professions, even if it meant making less money. And what was Bush's message to you? Go shopping.
Right, go to the mall. Exactly.
Go to the mall, go shopping. You want to save the country, go shopping. Diverted all that idealism, all of that community spirit into that. So, of course, you wind up with a society where you try to rally everybody. You've conditioned them to react with, nah, man, I'm watching out for my own ass.
Yeah, and as it pertains to these California wildfires, as we talked about on the Jimmy Dore show a bit last night towards the end of the show, if you really want to build LA 2.0, because you have a lot of building to do now, if you want to build that, the reason we laugh at that idea is because we know what's going to happen. We know that a lot of rich people who had their houses burnt down are going to rebuild somewhere else where their house is less likely to burn down, right? If you actually wanted to do a Green New Deal that wasn't about preaching the, virtues of climate concern and sacrifice of the individual, one Green New Deal type of program that you could implement to actually rebuild an actual LA 2.0 is rebuild LA with more fireproof buildings. Right? I mean, there are ways to fit buildings so that they don't catch fire when embers blow into them, as Russ was talking about, and as we'll talk about a little bit later on the show. What made these fires so catastrophic was these high winds that blow embers for miles, and then they land on another house, and then that house catches fire, and then that fire spreads. So if you actually build buildings and fireproof buildings, or maybe fireproof old buildings, that's an example of a massive public undertaking that would require the harnessing of immense political will. And yes, it would require a collective effort. So when you talk about a Green New Deal, I always thought it was a good idea when framed in that sense, which is not that we're going to completely upend the way we live our lives in order to combat temperature increases, but a new deal, a new economic paradigm that we need anyway, we have to implement anyway. This economic model is clearly dysfunctional. It's clearly coming apart at the seams. And part of this new economic paradigm, as part of that vision, we have a certain emphasis on sustainability, right? i.e., let's fireproof as many buildings as we can in LA, and the ones that burnt down, let's build them back so that they're less likely to catch fire when the next Santa Ana winds blow the exact right way during a dry season. Like, there's nothing unreasonable about doing that, but that requires, as Martin Luther King would say, a revolution of consciousness, right? Like, you need a new paradigm to implement that, and the reason why I think people just shrug off, well, man-made climate change, maybe not, whatever, we're not worried about it, is because I think they understand, either consciously or subconsciously, that consciousness is not there. That what's much more likely to happen after these wildfires in a place like LA is you're just going to have a brain drain and a capital drain, and people are going to be like, well, why build back here when I could build back somewhere else? That's what's much more likely to happen, right? So to expect people to take on the environment as a top issue requires a complete rejiggering of societal priorities, which the Democratic Party, who preaches about the urgency of the environmental issues, does not express. Even Nancy Pelosi will say, yeah, on one hand, these fires are a reminder that we can no longer afford to deny climate change. On the other hand, oh, yeah, these young progressives, yeah, they want a green new dream, whatever it is, whatever. Right? Like, if that's the elite's approach to it, of course that is going to filter down to the rank and file, because the people cannot afford to put their priorities last when they see, as Russell said, the Davos people don't. The Davos people talk a good game about climate change after flying in on private jets.
Yeah, they're very excited about projects that only impose a burden on the average person, like sorting your recycling, which we know from studies that have been done on this, most of that stuff ends up in landfill.
Yep.
Most of it does not get recycled. There are different kinds of plastics. It's not like you have a big tub of plastic. You can use that all and recycle it. You have to figure out what the different types of plastics are. It's very inefficient. And for the most part, it doesn't end up getting recycled. But it's the button on the corners at the lampposts in New York I've talked about. You have these buttons that are supposed to change the light. They do nothing. It's I've got to delve into the history of why these buttons exist. Did they ever do anything and then they got deactivated? Because from the time I was a little kid, those buttons have been on the lamppost and they never worked. Did they work in the 50s or something? Like, when did these work? That's what it is. Like, a lot of Democrat policies are giving you a placebo button at the lamppost that doesn't do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I never understood how anybody could think those actually do anything in a place like New York City. Those buttons actually do, like, there are certain small towns that don't get a lot of, like, pedestrian foot traffic where that actually does make a difference, because there's rarely anyone looking to cross the street on foot. So if you do want time between the red light and the next green light to get you to cross the street and you hit the button, it does actually do something. But in New York, it doesn't do anything because you can't make a right on a red anyway. So when the walk light goes, the people trying to turn are going to have to stop anyway. And then when it's green, if your walk light goes, they just have to kind of navigate that. So yeah, that always struck me as funny that those even exist in New York City at all.
Well, the chaos
so
you would create if they did work.
Right.
Forget about it.
Yeah. Forget it. Forget it.
Yeah. You know what? I am sure there are articles about this. That just occurred to me. You could probably find out. I'm actually curious. The next show, we will, for our small talk at the opening, we'll talk about the history of those buttons.
There you go. Coming up on Thursday.
So don't forget to tune in for that.
That's right. Make sure you tune in for that exciting show Thursday at noon. Maybe we'll do a segment on the Jimmy Dore Show about that tomorrow. Yeah. We'll pitch that to Malcolm. So we want to do
Malcolm, we need you to work up something about the placebo buttons on the lampposts in New York.
Yeah. Alrighty, Hamhawk30, thanks for the $10. I used to tell people I lived in Pasadena because they wouldn't know where Aladina was. I don't have that problem anymore. I'm really sorry to hear that. You mentioned on the last show that your house had burned down, and we're obviously very sorry to hear that. And I will tell you, now that you mention that, I didn't know where Aladina was either. I had never heard of that neighborhood until now. Mad Wolf, are you guys going to cover the mass TikTok migration to Red Note? It's the biggest FU to the government by going to an app that is actually owned by the Chinese government. Yes, we are. In fact, we're doing that next.
We literally have that segment.
That is coming up. Actually, that's the next segment. Spade 2187. Thank you for the $4.99. Russ, when you going to go solo? Keaton holding you back, baby. LOL. Thank you, Spade. Mark Pugliese. Russ, I still want that shirt. What shirt? The Venn diagram shirt or the Justice League shirt? If you want the Justice League shirt, you can get it at the Zago Brothers.
Did they start selling it?
I think they did.
I mean, they should.
I think they did.
So many people want to buy prints of this and the shirt.
Yeah, I thought they did. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $5 again, my friend. A fellow dissident was asking if Tucson was where she was shot. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Dwayne Vogel, thanks for the $5. Thanks for watching, Dwayne. Who knew all Biden had to do to stop a genocide was tweet a clip of Jeffrey Sachs? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the tweet of the year contender there. Salamander Fry, thanks for the $10. Hey, you guys are all right. Thank you, Salamander Fry.
Thank you.
You're all right too. Posmo replied on Marks when just the Palisades neighborhood, 20,000 people, is worth more than all of New Orleans, $5 million in property damage. Red pilled on Marks when just the Palisades neighborhood is worth more than all of New Orleans in property damages. Yep. Yep. Well, this is by far and away now, the costliest natural disaster in American history. Like, not even close. Not even close. I think when all is said and done, this could get up to the $500 billion level. I mean, we're at about 120 to 150 billion. That's the latest estimate. And we are obviously we might have more to report tomorrow. We hope we don't. Obviously, we hope that things
supposedly the winds are picking up again.
But yeah, they're going to pick up again, which is going to potentially set off another round of horror. So we will see what happens on that front. But obviously, everybody heed those warnings and stay safe and evacuate if you have to. Okay. All right. Let's do our TikTok story. That's coming up next. This is a fun one.
All right. Problem is, in a global, interconnected world, unless you're going to put up a firewall on the internet, very much like what they have in China, although from everyone I know who's gone there and from research I've done in preparation for planning on going there myself, you just get a VPN. And even there, you can go around the firewall. So banning an app like TikTok doesn't really make a lot of sense when you got other apps like it that people can just move over to. So Chinese TikTok alternative Red Note tops the charts ahead of potential TikTok ban. Now, people have a lot of feelings about this upcoming TikTok ban. We're going to take a look at a couple of people who plan on going over to Red Note. This fella is a creator who makes a living on TikTok, who's pretty pissed off.
America is so out of touch. Our government, I'm convinced, loves and thrives seeing us unhappy and seeing us struggle and seeing us poor. Because after the hearing with SCOTUS and listening to the way those judges don't even know what an algorithm is versus an app, they probably don't know the difference between Wi-Fi and 5G, and they're talking about, oh, you can just do another algorithm like it's going to the grocery store to just buy something. Seeing that Red Note, another Chinese app, which is owned and hosted in China, is the #1 app on the App Store today, is just beautiful. It's the most ironic icing on the cake for this government, because you're trying to take down the app that actually is safe, where all the data and servers are here in Texas, that has been proven to work in this country for the last 5-6 years. Now Americans are going to another Chinese app that is actually in China. sooner or later, Americans are going to be extremely fed up, and something's got to give. So as they say, let them eat cake. Let them eat cake, as the French said.
She never said that, but point taken. So
as the French said. She said, let them eat cake. It was the French said, all right, how's this for fucking cake, bitch? That's what the French said.
Yeah.
That's not a real quote.
It's not a real quote. Marie Antoinette never said that. So here's another person who I think reflects a lot of the feelings of people going to Red Note as an act of rebellion.
Dude, I'm going to fucking download Red Note, the Chinese equivalent of TikTok, like the Chinese TikTok app. I'm going to download it on my phone. I'm going to let it track other apps. I'm going to give it permission to see my location and all of my contacts. And then I'm just going to let it sit there. I'm going to let it sit there as a little window through which my personal Chinese spy can see everything that I'm doing. I'm not even going to participate. I'm not going to be active on the app. It will simply be a vessel through which I will be giving my Chinese spy a little taste of life vignette of my existence. We'll be able to see all
See, that guy you could tell is a pro. I mean, these Gen Z, they have generated and cultivated a crop of real social. That is a professional troll. Like, that guy has really mastered the art of the troll. All right, you're going to ban TikTok? I guess what? I'm going to download this Chinese app. I'm not even going to use it. I'm just going to give it permissions to see everything else I'm doing on my phone. And just as a big fuck you. So, yeah, good for him.
And in that spirit, there's been a lot of good subversive humor around that. A lot of memes like this. Me and my Chinese spy on January 18th at 11:59. Because the app is supposed to be banned January 19th. And here's something about Red Note. Laughing my ass off at thousands of people downloading Red Note, the version of TikTok that is actually owned by China, to spite the U.S. government, finding themselves having lovely interactions with the millions of Chinese citizens on the app and inadvertently undoing decades of U.S. propaganda. So here's a Chinese person welcoming an American. Welcome, my American friend. I am your new Chinese spy friend. So very cool the way this is inadvertently bringing people together. So to get a little more into what this app is, TikTok users are pushing back against the looming TikTok ban set to potentially go into effect Sunday by downloading a Chinese app called Red Note, which some users are calling China's TikTok. TikTok's ban was largely derived from national security concerns related to TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance, and many users are moving to Red Note as an explicit form of protest. Also known as, Xiao Hang Shu. Okay, I think that was about right.
See, that looks harder than it is.
It looks harder than it is because there's so many syllables there. In China, Red Note is a social media platform that includes images, short-form videos, community building notes, shopping, and more. It is not a one-to-one TikTok clone, and it is not owned by ByteDance. It is owned by Shanghai-based Xingyin Information Technology. American TikTokers who fear losing the platform have suggested their followers join them in downloading Red Note to send a message to the U.S. government, as well as the social media company Meta, which stands to gain new users of its TikTok-like product Reels if the ban goes into effect. Meta reportedly used a Republican lobbying firm to spread ill will toward TikTok in 2022.
Wow.
Yeah. Ooh, the plot thickens. Oh, hang on. Mark Zuckerberg's not your new MAGA boyfriend? Really? He's just kind of going with the flow to get richer?
No one cares about Mark Zuckerberg. We're not covering Mark Zuckerberg anymore. Apparently, no one cares. Every time we drop a video on Mark Zuckerberg, it does like nothing. So fuck him. Irrelevant, low ratings, Mark Zuckerberg.
We had a simp in the comments. I sent you that I actually responded to. It was like, no, I think Mark Zuckerberg learned jujitsu and talked to some real people and got out of his bubble. And I said, listen, man, you got to go on Grindr and try to hook a rich guy. You're never going to be happy until you can live as your authentic self. Some have said that, so at least one person cares about Mark Zuckerberg in that special way. Some have said that following a ban, they are prepared to do week-long meta blackouts, meaning they will not use any meta apps such as Instagram and Facebook. Yo, let me know when it is, man. I'm getting sick of those. I only know libs on Facebook, really. On Monday, RedNote was the top free-to-download app on the Apple App Store, followed by TikTok's sister app, Lemon 8. Users say that while they wait to see whether the U.S. Supreme Court will give TikTok an 11th hour reprieve, they plan to use RedNote if TikTok goes away Sunday. RedNote is a Shanghai-based Chinese-language social media app that offers a little bit of everything Americans are used to in a social media app. Users can share videos, post pictures, make text posts, and access a host of shopping features. The interface is different from TikTok's in that a video does not immediately start playing upon the app's opening, and users must log in to begin using it. However, it is similar in that it serves content it thinks each user will like. Well, every app does that. Although RedNote has been available in English, some users reported Monday that it appeared to be more accessible for its American user base as its popularity grew. RedNote has 300 million monthly active users, according to TechCrunch. TechCrunch reported that women are 79% of the user base. Well, not for long once they get a load of our chuds going over there. Could RedNote be banned like TikTok? Like TikTok and Lemon8, the short answer appears to be yes. However, it is not as straightforward as it is for TikTok and Lemon8, whose parent company ByteDance is named in the law. Experts noted that the law gives the executive branch the authority to deem a country a foreign adversary, and that in doing so, it can choose to ban an app that comes from that country. In this case, China is already deemed a foreign adversary in the TikTok ban, and therefore the executive branch could theoretically decide that other apps from China must be banned. But lawmakers who crafted the bill said in interviews with the Washington Post that while it could be used for foreign-controlled social media platforms, the core intention of the ban was to target TikTok and its sister applications. Well, I feel like this is related to our ceasefire coverage later on. It was all about Israel. It was all about shutting down one of the main platforms for sharing information about what was going on in Gaza. If that is no longer a factor, not only are they not going to have any interest in banning other Chinese apps, if Trump is able to kind of delay this and block it as he wants to do, it's probably not even going to end up applying to TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a fun development and a feel-good story that people are downloading.
Feel-good story of 2025.
Yeah, that people are downloading this
There's
Chinese
the
app.
CEASEFIRE and RedNote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that people are downloading this Chinese app in protest. It's already starting to, dismantle some of the, Red Scare type of fear-mongering between Americans and the Chinese that they're getting to, interact on this new app now. And we'll see. We'll see if Donald Trump has this last trick. Maybe he has one more trick up his sleeve for TikTok before he gets sworn in. We'll see. We'll see what happens next week. But I think, look, this was obviously, yes. I mean, China's been a foreign adversary for a lot longer than people have been using TikTok to disseminate pro-Palestine information. And so what do you think caused this? What do you think prompted Congress to pass a ban on it? I mean, it's a no-brainer. They didn't just suddenly decide that the Chinese threat of not only information gathering and hacking, but they will say that it's somehow a Chinese influence over our culture, sort of cultural sabotage through TikTok. Yeah, the concern was pretty obvious. That it was about protecting Israel from the kind of grassroots criticism that an app like this was used to propagate.
And hats off to these kids, man. You know, they always get beat up on, the Zoomers, the upcoming alphas. Very often they have been able to coordinate themselves to use these apps that they understand better than anybody else.
Right.
In very subversive ways. The idea that they're using this to open up their information to China in defiance, that they're going to Red Note and actually using the opportunity to talk to other Chinese people. The way that they're subverting the Cold War mentality and going around it and being open-minded about engaging with another culture, I think you can clearly see the generation gap there between a generation that's grown up in a world that's interconnected, where these kinds of, what for them are in some ways arbitrary divisions between people living in different parts of the world just don't really make a lot of sense for them. It's just not the world they live in. You know, one of my favorite tours to give is the Lower East Side. And one of the most interesting things about the history there, because that's where all of the immigrant groups came in at the turn of the 20th century, the immigrants themselves held on to the old prejudices. The Irish didn't want to deal with the Italians, the Jews didn't want to deal with them, and the next generation, that didn't make any sense because they all grew up in these tenements. They all knew each other. You're not going to just hate the Irish kid down the block that you've known since first grade, right? Whereas the parents still had those prejudices. In some ways, it seems like that's what's playing out. You know, you have this older generation for whom these power games between nations make a lot of sense. When you got kids that have been interacting with people from all over the world their entire lives on these apps, the idea that you're going to hate people in China, I think it's a much harder sell for them. And that's the feel-good element, really, in this story, you know, and especially this is a generation that's so beaten up on. When I've delved into their culture on that level, which I did around Wall Street Bets, where they were really trying to take down Wall Street unsuccessfully. In the end, the house always wins, right? They control all the card tables. But they tried. And when I delved into the conversations they were having around it, it was all about trying to subvert the whole system, trying to use the system's tools against itself.
Right. And the irony is that they're using the tools of the system in ways that many of the architects of that system don't even understand.
They don't understand.
Right? So like Gen Z will always be, they're always going to be the roadrunner to the boomers Wile E. Coyote because they grew up doing this shit. Right? Like you look at the average congressperson, oh, we're going to show those kids a ban TikTok. A few days later,
and then they just went on another app.
Boom, 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 boom. Like they're faster. They're faster. They're more nimble. They're quicker on their feet. They're much more open-minded, obviously. No, I think they're based. I think Gen Z is great. I think the Wall Street Bets, my mind went there too. How'd they organize that on Reddit? Right? Like they use the tools that the oligarchic class built in ways that many members of that oligarchy don't know how to use. Because it
wouldn't even occur to them.
This new economy, right? This new sort of like feudalism is presided over, at least on a government level. I mean, obviously the people who like develop the apps know how to use them, but the people who develop the apps don't give a shit who uses them or for what reason. They're the tech bros who want to get rich in gym shorts, right? The people who actually preside over this system and actually would do something like pass a bill that bans an app if it's not sold to an American interest or a non-hostile, a non-adversarial interest. Yeah, you're talking about who? Who's going to pass that bill? Chuck Grassley? You think Chuck Grassley knows how you would even subvert that law, how you would protest that law in the most appropriate of ways, which is downloading a Chinese app? No. So, yeah, they're always going to be 5, 6, 7 steps out in front of them. And, yeah, man, they're based. They're subversive. The Wall Street Bets is a perfect example. This is a perfect example. The fact that they put it on the line to protest the genocide is an example.
Right.
Like, they're actually pretty cool. Like, they're much cooler than my generation. I think the millennials, we were the last generation that really got sort of bought off. And I think a lot of millennials sold out, not realizing that the house had already been sold before.
Right.
Like we bought a bag of shit, right? But we bought it. And that's why I think my generation is still, we're still okay compared to older generations without opening that can of worms. I won't go any further just to spare us another meltdown, because nothing is more polarizing than this, folks. You think
I'm
of all the
a
shit
boomer.
I know. Yes, you're a boomer and you're great. That's great. I understand that. Yes. The point taken, okay? Not talking about all of everybody. We're just talking about numbers and polling and things like that. But no, Gen Z, they're great. They're great. I mean, they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve.
They do.
And this is one of them. Yeah. So good for them. All right. Hey, folks, you know what? We're not Gen Z, but we were able to figure out why our patron scroll had not been working. And luckily, we fixed it. So now it's time to shout out
really
our
need a
patrons.
kid.
Yeah, yeah, we need a kid. Yeah,
we really need one of these Zoomers.
Yep,
we need an Andrew. We need an Andrew.
That's right. That's right. We need an Andrew. Well, Jake was able to fix it. We were able to figure out what was going wrong. And so if you would like to become one of our members, you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com, or join our locals. We're really pushing the locals hard. That's a free speech platform associated with Rumble. So if you're watching on Rumble now, you can join our locals community by clicking the bright red join button underneath the video player. Everybody else can go to this link, DoDissidents.locals.com. It's just $5 a month, and you get all kinds of perks. You get your name up on the show credits here. You get call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday night. You also get 2 bonus live streams per month, which includes a sort of regular content and call-in stream, plus a movie club interactive film screening stream, which you have call-in access to as well. You also get live stream access to our pre-recorded full-length interviews, as well as live stream access to special live events. So the last special live event that we did was Russell's walking tour in advance of Halloween. Russell's also doing another walking tour in March, the Irish Mob Tour, Hell's
once
Kitchen.
we get a day off, I'll put that up.
That's true. It's actually getting close. And so you also, like I said, pre-recorded live stream access to our pre-recorded interviews. We didn't have an interview this week because we did the Jimmy Dore show, and we are actually slated to host the Jimmy Dore show tomorrow because Jimmy is back stateside. Well, not stateside, seaside, whatever. But as I understand, his home is okay, but they are going to relocate as a precaution, as I understand. So he won't have access to the studio. So we are going to do the show tomorrow. We're going to fill in for them tomorrow, Wednesday. So we do have one more. And then next week, obviously, we have the inauguration, special Monday stream.
We just had the Black Conservative. We were going to bring on Anita Bryant, but she died.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
She died on us.
Yeah, so we're hard up for a guest tomorrow. That's right. But like we said, we say it all the time, our members are the backbone of the show. So if you would like to join, DoDissidents.locals.com. You get all those perks for just $5. All righty, let's go to some more super chats over here. Michael Steven, was Tony Michael's podcast's new display a gift from example Paramount Studios or perhaps God? I don't know what his new display was. I'll have to take a look at that. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Kristen Nye, all of that, no mention of geoengineering. No, I'm not versed on that. But I mean, So thank you for that. Fun Bad, thank you for the $5.
DARPA is making the gay frog start fires.
That's right. It was a gay guy who started, who blew the embers around. That's right. Well, there you go. We're experts. I bet every single China watcher on the internet are melting down about Red Note like the libs reacting to Trump's victory. Thank you, Fun Bad. Appreciate that very much.
Listen, I'm just going to say, if our Chinese friends are watching, and they're always watching, listen, man, don't throw me in a cell when I go over there, man. It's going to be very bad PR for you guys.
Oh, we're here. Look, the China Shill. The red sun in the sky starts playing. Cultural victory. Thank you, China Shill. Appreciate that very much.
I'm just going over there to get the original chop suey.
That's right. The walk
They
lights.
say it was invented here, but I don't believe it.
Yeah. The walk light. There is your play, Russell, from Ellen Johnson. Yeah. Eric Rousseau, elevator closed door button is fake too. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. That's another scam.
You know, it's weird because after a while the door closes, so it's like, did it close because of the button, or would it have closed anyway?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Violent fembot, it's become patently obvious that climate change is a Malthusian method of suppressing us peasants and keeping a third world underdeveloped while elites promote unlimited warfare and buy carbon credits. Well, yeah, that is their rationale for doing just that, it seems. Absolutely. I agree. Stoop sign, whenever you push a walk light button in NYC, Gitmo detainee gets electroshocked in the balls. Yeah, that's what it's really for. Thank you, Stoop sign. Appreciate that very much. Okay, folks, let's go on to some of the meteor segments of the day. Anthony Blinken, outgoing Secretary of State, dropped the following video to say farewell as his tenure as the United States top diplomat winds to a close. So here is his farewell message to America. You're welcome, from Tony Blinken.
My final trip as Secretary of State. So in this job, we've traveled well over 1 million miles, meeting with governments, meeting with people from all over the world. And every place I've gone, I've heard from people the strong desire to work with the United States, to do things together for the betterment of our people and people around the world.
It's very uplifting.
From the beginning,
yeah,
President Biden made clear that there were two sides of the same coin that we needed to make progress on. There's a great premium on American engagement. We know that when we're not engaged, when we're not leading, then it's likely that someone else is. Or maybe just as bad, no one is. But the flip side of that coin is that more than ever before, we have to find ways to cooperate, coordinate, to work with other countries. Most of the problems that we have to solve, most of the opportunities we want to seize, we can do so much more effectively when we're doing it with others, not alone. And that's what we've seen over these past 4 years. Countries coming together to work on everything from food security, preventing the next pandemic, to dealing with things like the synthetic opioid crisis. Our alliances, our partnerships have been at the heart of our success. Now, 4 years later, America is acting from a position of strength.
Hey, what do you think, folks? Do you think this guy has a future on Red Note? You think he should download Red Note? How are his influencer chops here? What do you think so far?
That doesn't just happen. It's a reflection of the investments we've made, the diplomacy we've exerted around the world.
I mean,
now,
he's really got an ear for
making this
generic
happen
music.
day in, day out.
Yeah,
are our diplomats around the world, and our embassies and consulates, more than 200 of them. It's been one of the great privileges of my life to work side by side with our extraordinary diplomats. This is one final opportunity for me to say to them, thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing on behalf of our fellow citizens. Thank you for what you're doing to make the world a little bit safer, a little bit more prosperous, a little bit more full of opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Safer, more prosperous, and more full of opportunity.
Where the fuck do you get the balls?
That's what I think when I think the legacy of Tony Blinken.
That's amazing.
So Scott Ritter replies, "You are singularly responsible for the deaths of more than 1 million people as a result of a Russian-Ukrainian conflict you could have avoided, but facilitated because peace with Russia was never an option, only war. You took advantage of a mentally diminished president to take our nation to the brink of nuclear war with Russia, violating Constitution and due process. You're a war criminal in every sense of the word. I hope you're investigated, charged, and found guilty of betraying your nation, my country, and I hope you're given justice, the justice you so richly deserve." Well, this is the thing. You know, Blinken, really, we've been saying it's been President Blinken this whole time. I mean, he really is calling the shots much more, I think, than Joe Biden. And so, yes, he is deserving of that reply by Scott Ritter there. Max Blumenthal, you've been to Israel 11 times since October 7th, which means you've logged at least 132,000 miles orchestrating the Gaza Holocaust. Your closing propaganda video features no images of you with Netanyahu, yet it is the murderous relationship which will define your entire legacy. Good point. Notice, of all the diplomats he's seen shaking hands with in that little propaganda piece, Netanyahu totally absent. Not too proud of that work, it seems, which we'll get to more in a moment. So here's a Palestinian journalist, Motassem Dalul. Liar, you've traveled 1 million miles to orchestrate, facilitate, and afford needed equipment for war crimes, including those in Gaza, where my wife, brother, sister, 2 sons, and hundreds of relatives were killed. Speaking of some truth, back to Tony Blinken there. Jackson Hinkle says, as Secretary of State, so here's a nice list, here's a nice resume, led a genocide in Gaza, slaughtered civilians in Lebanon, bombed civilians in Yemen, created al-Qaeda Syrian government, tried to overthrow African leaders, overthrew elections in Romania, tried starting World War III with Russia, got nearly 1 million Ukrainians killed, pushed China further towards war, attempted Georgian color revolution. No lies detected there. That seems like his resume, all right. Well, he spoke before the Atlantic Council, and here is a more fitting farewell for Antony Blinken. A protester disrupted U.S. Secretary of State Blinken's speech at the Atlantic Council, holding him responsible for the killing of civilians in Gaza and describing him as Bloody Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. So this was this morning, as I understand it. So here's some video.
At the same time, we strengthened America's robust sanctions regime on Iran and delivered on President Biden's commitment.
You will forever be known as Bloody Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. You have the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on your hands. We have spent
Thank you. I respect your views. Please allow me to share mine. Thank you.
What a fucking dweeb.
We've held car rallies. The blood of innocent civilians, of children, is on your hands. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will hold you accountable. We will hold you accountable. Bloody Blinken.
Look at this psychopath.
Yep.
So to continue. At the same time, we strengthened America's robust sanctions regime on Iran.
Yeah, the sanctions regime on Iran. So what's interesting about it is in that speech, he admitted something which really speaks to the failure that was Antony Blinken, even on his own terms. And obviously, we do not co-sign the pretenses that would define in his mind what constitutes a success or a failure. But even on his own terms, here he is admitting, indeed we assess that Hamas has recruited almost as many new militants as it has lost. Biden and Blinken enabled genocide for nothing. Blinken admits as Israel takes the deal, allegedly because Trump pressured Netanyahu. So obviously we're going to get more into the ceasefire later. But here is Blinken admitting that, once again, on their own terms, which is that this onslaught against Gaza was 100% necessary and couldn't have been done any other way. On its own terms, here he is admitting it was all for nothing.
Indeed, we assess that Hamas has recruited almost as many new militants as it has lost. That is a recipe for an enduring insurgency and perpetual war. The longer the war goes on, the worse the humanitarian situation gets in Gaza.
What did we remember reading and citing? What did people warn you about on day one of this, which is that you can't kill an idea? You can't kill an idea. If you're going to wage a war like this and slaughter children at a faster rate than the Nazis slaughtered children in the death camps during the Holocaust, you're going to create more militants than you kill, even assuming you kill almost all that exists. And what he's saying there is that after all this, they have not even eradicated Hamas. They have not even won the war on their own terms. So even on their own terms, these are two conflicts here, the Russia-Ukraine war and the Gaza genocide, that was, according to their worldview, and like I said, we don't co-sign that worldview, complete failures. Complete failures. This, we'll get into this later, but while we're evaluating Blinken, while we're saying our farewell to him,
we have some other things to say about Lincoln, but that's for another show.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I never thought I would say this ever in my life. I really did. But I actually think Biden may be a worse president than George W. Bush. I actually think he might be even worse because of the absolute bone-deep evil of perpetuating this genocide, which, again, I don't want to jump the gun into the next segment where we talk about the ceasefire. But when you look at how none of this should have happened, like zero. The Ukraine war, you're talking about, as Hinkle said there, almost 1 million dead Ukrainians, a country absolutely in ruins for generations to come. Gaza, look at what happened there by his own admission. Now, they're talking about Hamas has as many fighters now as they did before this onslaught began. He might even be worse. He might be. I'm not willing to say that conclusively yet, but I never even thought I would think that. I never thought I could imagine how any administration can be worse than the Bush administration, but they're giving them a run for their money. I'll say that. It is an open question now as to where I would rank them. But I think it's pretty damn close, which is a pretty fucking damning thing. It's a pretty damning thing. And this guy, Anthony Blinken, he is more responsible in my view than Joe Biden because he has a brain in his head. Biden was gone before he stepped foot in the office. It's really Blinken's foreign policy. He was the architect of this. And as you could see, just completely unthinking and uncaring. And while we're here, sorry, I'll just get this over with before I toss to you, just to put a button on things. Here's Max Blumenthal. Tony Blinken has already sustained 2 long interruptions during his closing Atlantic Council speech. Blumenthal was apparently in the House, touting his own Middle East accomplishments. Your legacy is genocide, one protester shouted, causing Blinken to pause for over a minute. This is the scene outside. And then here, Blumenthal catches the final farewell, the true farewell for Anthony Blinken. Here he is, his motorcade being shamed out of the venue. All right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. What are your thoughts? Where do you think?
Yeah, there are some people that you watch who have these jobs like Fat Sagar, who you say, this person is immoral. He's immoral, but he's human. And then you have others like Matthew Miller and Anthony Blinken and, frankly, Kamala Harris, where these people are like golems. Like, they just don't seem to have a soul. They are just absolutely psychopathic. We've seen it with Anthony Blinken when he tries to project caring for the people who are being slaughtered, and he can't really do it. It reads as very bad attempt of somebody who doesn't quite understand feelings to pretend to have them. It's a terrible thing, right? He clearly does not care about these people being slaughtered, and he doesn't care about having his crimes thrown up in his face. Just watch him there. He's completely unperturbed, completely unbothered by it.
Right.
George Bush, you want to talk about who's worse? Yeah, George Bush, you got the sense that he kind of felt bad here and there. Not that that vindicates him in any way. You got the sense that he had some capacity for guilt and shame.
Right.
Biden, as you say, he's gone. But you look at Blinken's reaction to those accusations, just absolutely no feeling. And that's part of the tragedy, because you watch these motorcades driving away and these protesters out there calling him to account. he doesn't have enough of a human soul to care. Like, he doesn't care. He's rich. Right. He's going to stay that way. His social circle is not going to hold him accountable, right? He'll be fine. He's not going to go to the kinds of parties that Anthony Blinken will be invited to for the rest of his life and have anyone call him out. They'll all laugh about how the peasants don't understand real politic, and you do what you have to do, and the world's complicated, and that's it. There's no accountability. And Trump, in spite of, hey, we're all very happy at the turn things seem to be taking, what, he's going to hold them to account?
Well,
these people are never going to pay a price.
There is some reporting on that. Like I said, we won't jump the gun, and it's from one site that it was translated from Hebrew to English on a Google Translate without much sourcing. So I don't want to report that with too much credence at the moment. I'm not saying it's wrong, but there is reporting from Israel that says that Trump is basically going to go to war with the ICC in exchange for this deal, going to protect IDF soldiers from foreign prosecutions, and part of that reporting even suggested that he would allow Netanyahu to break the ceasefire if he could find some rationale to do so. So we don't want to paint a rosy picture of what's going on. It's obviously a much more positive development than a negative one at this point, just for a ceasefire.
Sure.
But we just have to be real about that with those caveats. Like I said, we're not saying that's fact. We're just saying there is some reporting of that. We will obviously have a lot more answers in the coming days and weeks. But thinking about like George W. Bush, the reason I'm starting to question who's worse is because, look, after 9/11, there was going to be a military response, and given the United States history, it was probably going to be disproportionate and awful, right? Like, we were probably going to react in a way that did more harm than good. Now, George W. Bush took that to such an extreme as to make him, in my opinion, the worst president in American history, far and away, up until these guys came along and did this. When it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to Gaza, as Trump just indicated, Trump just basically leaned on Netanyahu to accept the terms that were suggested almost a year ago, and he did. What that tells you is this didn't have to happen at all.
Right.
And the Ukraine war didn't have to happen at all.
And that's the real message.
And that's the real message, is that none of it had to happen. Like, yeah, after 9/11, something terrible. We were going to do something terrible after 9/11. Bill Clinton would have done something terrible after 9/11. So would Obama. Right? So would Trump have. But, like, this is like the Ukraine war. Like, we're talking about now, we're going to do a segment on this tomorrow, where Trump's national security advisor is suggesting that for some cockamamie reason he has in his head, that we'll get a better deal from Russia if we lower the draft age of Ukrainians from 26 to 18, so that Russia feels more threatened, so they're more likely to give us a good deal. That's ludicrous. That's nonsense. What you're going to end up taking are the terms that you could have taken before the war started. Like, under Biden and under Blinken, all of this bloodshed was just completely unnecessary. There was no course of events in motion that said any of this had to happen. It's all for absolutely nothing, as Blinken just admitted there.
Right.
As Blinken just admitted there, you don't have fewer militants in Gaza than you did at the start of this. All for nothing. All of this for absolutely nothing. What a fucking disaster of a presidency this was. That's why I say it could be worse. I'm not saying I'm not locking that opinion in at this moment, but it's a conversation. And I never thought that would be a conversation. I always thought, no way anybody gets as bad as George W. Bush. No way anyone comes even close. But they have come close. They're close.
Yeah. Thomas Frank talks a lot about this, mostly in an economic context, the liberal worship of expertise and advanced degrees. And if you look at how all of this has played out, not just this, going back to Iraq, the liberal ideal is, well, we have these stupid peasants, we have these stupid troglodytes, we have these stupid retrograde working people who don't understand how things work. And we have to elevate the smartest people. We have to elevate expertise. And that's how you'll get things run properly. Well, there's always been a critique of that point of view from the real left, from the authentic left, the idea that expertise equals good policy, when very often it winds up creating terrible policy, because very often experts are limited by the biases of their area of training. Very often they have a class bias, because to get that training, very often they came from a certain class background to get into those schools in the first place. So very often these people who are experts in foreign policy have terrible instincts. They have terrible ideas about the world. They've received a lot of awful conventional wisdom, and they've spent their lives very often ensconced in an ivory tower bubble that removes them from the real world impacts of their decisions. And part of the reason the liberals idealize that is because they aspire to it. You know, most of them are the wait staff who think they've been invited to the party. But in the interest of maintaining that illusion for themselves, they take on this worship of these ruling class experts who, if there's any overall theme running through particularly the 21st century, it's that these experts have destroyed the freaking world. They've destroyed the country. They've destroyed the world. They've constantly been wrong about everything, whether in academia, whether in politics, whether in economics, whether in warfare. They've been wrong about every single thing. Now, at one time, they used to try to balance out administrations with some people with less elevated backgrounds. You had voices from union leaders at the table. With the loss of those voices, this is what governance by the experts looks like. You've got these cold, inhuman people like Anthony Blinken pretending to have feelings while slaughtering an entire nation of people with no real care about it. That's what that looks like when you have no real people involved in decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what ultimately, I think, Kamala Harris represented to so many people, right? Yes. Whereas Trump is a slightly different version of that. There's a human element to Trump. There's a wild card element. What did I call him? I said there's the Russian roulette gun with one chamber empty. Well, there's an example of 1 in 6 times, you can avoid something catastrophic. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be 5 more catastrophic things that he does, but every once in a while throughout that cycle, you're going to get a little respite. With this was just an onslaught. Look at this administration. Look at Anthony Blinken's tenure. I mean, that's what made that video so laughable. That's why, he essentially got ratioed. I mean, when you have the follower count that he has, you can't get exactly ratio, but it came very close. Right. Which means there was a lot more negative sentiment to that than there was positive. That's why it looks so absurd, because it was just an onslaught of horror, just absolute horror, unending with no respite whatsoever. And so good riddance to Anthony Blinken. Furrows Queen, Eugenia Cooney will be crying herself to sleep if TikTok gets banned. If you know, you know. Okay, well, I don't know. And social media must be one of the worst and best things to happen to the world. Best for vain slut selfies, bad for normies. There you go, Furrows Queen. Eric Rousseau, Iron Maiden guitarist Adrian Smith loses house in L.A. wildfire. Oh, wow. I mean, that list is going to be grow. What are they at? Well over 12,000 structures by now. Ham Hook, thanks for the $5. I credit my sanity through all this to a profound cynicism, but this light post button thing has me really disillusioned. I really shattered your whole world there. Oh boy.
Yeah, maybe we better not do that segment. We don't
better not do that. Yeah. Killer Hit and go to the internet.
Deep depression.
Yeah, and look up Wagging the Moon Doggy, which is an expansive web piece on the fake moon landing by Dave McGowan, Laurel Canyon peep. It's fantastic. All right, I'm into that shit. I mean, I don't know if I believe it, but I'm into that shit. That's fun. I'll look that up.
I'm a fan of a show, Y-Files, where basically the structure of the show is he tells the conspiracy theory straight without questioning any of its premises. And then the second part, he breaks down what he's been able to find about research. He did one about the whole moon landing thing, and it doesn't seem to hold up, the idea that they... Look, the reason I've never bought that conspiracy theory is, where did all the spin-off technology come from if they didn't actually do it?
Interesting.
Why would that technology exist if there was no moon landing?
That's a good question. Fuck you, acting President Blinken. Thank you, Eric Russo. Appreciate that. Okay. What else we got here? We got Pete Sweet. Thanks for the $10. Great job filling in for Jimmy. Thank you. Nice interviews with Colonel McGregor. Glad, Keaton, that you didn't back down to his skewed view of South American history, although Colonel gets much right about our foreign policy. Yeah, it was it was a good conversation. Good back and forth.
Yeah, we had two in a row with people who are not in our ideological lane, but hey, man, that's how you get try to find some common ground, man.
Yeah, and try to argue your case where you disagree. You know, just make your case. That's all.
The thing that sucks, and it's something, I mean, it's a learning curve doing this. Joe Rogan has 3 hours for a reason, because very often when you have a certain amount of time with a guest and they throw out something that you might want to push back on, and you have 5 more questions, you got to make a decision. Do I want to eat up half this interview litigating South America, or do I want to ask him this thing? Because you can't do both.
Right. There's a time issue. Also, I will just say, as an interviewer, there is a special circumstance of being a fill-in host on another channel. Like, you don't want the guest to have a negative experience on another channel, on another person's channel.
Another
if it's our channel and they walk away and they don't, if someone comes in here and they say something that I really think just deserves, a nuclear response, if they don't like us anymore, that we can live with that. But these guests, they don't deal with us. They deal with Jimmy's team. So if I come in and go at, if I create a negative experience for them, it reflects on the other.
It reflects on
their
show.
Operation. And so you kind of have to take a special consideration. Not that I would have. I mean, I thought both McGregor and Foreman were fine. Like, I was not compelled to really throw down with them. But I'm just saying that is another consideration on top of the practical ones, like timing and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, with the Greg interview, look, he was a good sport. We pushed back on him where, it was really like, well, there's no way we're going to the next question without talking about this.
Right.
Things like Elon is a genius. Yeah. Like, you want to spend 20 minutes talking about Elon's family connections and business career, or do you want to get to more important things?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So things like that, it's like Israel, healthcare.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely wanted to get to Israel. That was the big one. And I thought that piece of it came out really good, actually.
So
I was very happy with that, yeah.
But the thing for me, the main thing for me in that interview, went about as well as I could have hoped. It was the Yeshitela thing.
Right.
We literally left him speechless. He had, I mean, I don't know how. I thought he would have been actually aware of Uhuru, but apparently he did not know that there were black leftists with very similar views to him about the Democratic Party and the welfare state.
Well, this is the thing about partisan media, and I'm not knocking them, but when you are in a camp
because he was on Tucker, because that's why I thought he would have known him, and because he is, as I pointed out, look, man, you could like his ideology, not like his ideology. That guy does a great job, especially knowing now he does that himself.
Yeah, he catches what's out there.
How the hell does he? What does he just watch The View on quadruple speed every day?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, on top of things.
In terms of the craftsmanship of his show, respect.
Kuznetsky was saying, I feel my cerebral cortex thinning. Got to go work out. Maybe that'll be a cerebral thickener. There you go. Thank you, Kuznetsky was saying. Fun bad. Also, Pac-Man versus Jank is the most boring beef ever. Oh, I didn't even know that existed. Thank you. Michael Mike. Russell, bring a Kim Jong-un impersonator with you to China. There you go. Brent Yoendo says, started reading Chaos, hoping that it, along with watching Whitney Webb, doesn't lead me down a Michael Shannon bug path. Think I felt an itch. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies that's based on a great play by Tracy Letts. And, yeah, Michael Shannon in that movie is fantastic.
Chaos is also really well written. Like I'm a big Raymond Chandler fan, and it definitely kind of has that feel, of like meeting all these weird characters in LA with a mysterious secret.
Right. We are at 666 likes on YouTube. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Smash that subscribe button while you're here, please. Smash that like button. Tweet this stream out over on Rumble. Smash that follow button. Good crowd in here for an afternoon stream. Over 3,000 between all the platforms. So thank you all very much for that. All right. Let's move on to our next segment. So we just bid farewell to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, but we have reported on over the past year or so some resignations from Blinken's State Department. And three of these people went on 60 Minutes. And this past Sunday, they were featured in a segment about the State Department's indifference and complicity in the Gaza genocide. So this is a write-up on the 60 Minutes piece by Common Dreams. In a Sunday interview with 60 Minutes, former State Department officials spoke with journalist Cecilia Vega and offered a window into how the United States has greased the wheels of carnage in Gaza. Hala Rarit, an American diplomat who spent 18 years working on human rights and counterterrorism in the Middle East and elsewhere, left her post last spring, becoming the first State Department diplomat to publicly resign over the Biden administration's policies backing Israel's siege on Gaza, according to Democracy Now! Rarit would send daily reports to senior leadership in Washington containing, quote, gruesome images and her warnings, according to 60 Minutes. I would show the complicity that was indisputable. Fragments of U.S. bombs next to massacres of mostly children, Rarit recounted. Here's what else Rarit had to say. Now, 60 Minutes, last time we featured their stuff, they did copyright claim it, so we're doing the whole audio thing here. So this is the audio version of what she had to say, in part, on that interview.
Show the complicity that was indisputable. Fragments of U.S. bombs next to massacres of mostly children, and that's the devastation. It's been overwhelmingly children.
When you tried to speak out, vocalize what you saw happening in Gaza, you feel like you were told to shut up.
Yes. I would show images of children that were starved to death. In one incident, I was basically berated, don't put that image in there. We don't want to see it. We don't want to see that the children are starving to death.
Who told you that?
A colleague.
A superior?
Yeah. I was told the contrary by others. Keep them in. We need to see it.
Goes on. There's a linkage between every single bomb that is dropped in Gaza and the U.S. because every single bomb that is dropped from an American-made plane. Josh Paul, a former director in the State Department's Bureau of Political and Military Affairs, who resigned shortly after October 7th, told 60 Minutes. So we covered this. This was within a few weeks of October 7th. He was one of the first to go. And Josh Paul was featured in this piece. So here is a second quote from him.
After October 7th, there was no space for debate or discussion. I was part of email chains where there were very clear directions saying, here are the latest requests from Israel. These need to be approved by 3 p.m.
Expedited.
Correct.
Where were these orders to greenlight weapons transfers coming from? How high up did this go?
This came from the president, from the secretary, and from those around them.
Now think about that. Not even a 24-hour turnaround. You would get emails in the morning saying, this came from Israel. We need approval on this by 3 p.m. 3 p.m. And this was in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. So you see how all in we were on one strategy from day one, according to Josh Paul. A third person interviewed, Andrew Miller, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Israeli-Palestinian Affairs, resigned last June to, quote, spend more time with his family, but has since gone public with concerns about the U.S.'s role in the war. So he didn't have the courage to resign and protest at the time, but now he's making his concerns known. The highest ranking official to do so thus far, according to 60 Minutes. So here's what Andrew Miller had to say.
The Israelis were using those bombs in some instances to target one or two individuals in densely packed areas. And in enough instances, we saw that was in question how Israel was using it, and those weapons were suspended.
The U.S. suspended a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel in spring 2024, though in general, weapons have continued to flow. Reacting to Miller's comments, that Israel bombed densely packed areas, one observer wrote Sunday, 60 Minutes is finally exposing the supply chain of genocide. Yes, finally exposing the supply chain of genocide. You're finally starting to see some of the media come out after the election is over, as Trump is about to take office, and say what they should have been saying all along. One more example of this, Chris Hayes. So Case Study QB with the video clip. Thanks as always. Great work, my friend. Chris Hayes reflects on Biden's Gaza genocide legacy as he plans to send $8 billion more in weaponry to Israel as he leaves office. So this is a 7-minute piece. We were not going to play the whole thing, but here he talks about the Leahy Law, explains what that is, and who is incidentally exempt from it.
Finally wound down. There was one, and as the Cold War finally wound down, there was one lawmaker who made an indelible contribution to rolling back these abuses and attempting to set a standard for American behavior abroad and the behavior of our allies that we armed. That was Senator Pat Leahy, Democrat of Vermont, in 1997. Leahy Law barred the Pentagon and the Department of State from transferring U.S. arms to countries that we thought were committing human rights abuses. And that is what I keep thinking of as I process the news that on the way out the door, the Biden administration is going to transfer $8 billion more in weapons to Israel, including fighter jets and attack helicopters, bombs, warheads, and artillery shells. $8 billion in weaponry given over to an ally waging what I think can only be described as total war in Gaza that has, according to, I think, multiple independent experts and reporters and NGOs, been committing war crimes, and ethnic cleansing, according to a former Israeli defense minister, where Israeli soldiers say they have been ordered to target and kill innocents arbitrarily, including children, and that they have used Palestinians as human shields for their operations in Gaza. As whistleblowers and detainees say the Israeli authorities regularly torture Palestinian prisoners. The UN says Israel is using starvation as a strategy in Gaza. Amnesty International says Israel is committing a genocide. Dozens of doctors, nurses, and paramedics who volunteered in Gaza and were there and saw up close told the New York Times they'd seen, as you see the images there in front of you, multiple children who were shot in the head or chest, bullets. And they even brought back the x-rays you're seeing right now to prove it, so people would believe that they had seen children with bullets lodged in their skulls. As Congresswoman Katie Porter pointed out in a House hearing last year, the U.S. ban on arms transfers to human rights abusers, the Leahy Law, has one big exception.
State Department says that aid should stop immediately if there's a problem. Does it?
It totally depends on the circumstances and situation.
Does it depend on the country that's getting the aid?
It also depends on the country receiving the aid, yes.
So what country does aid not stop immediately under Leahy?
I'd have to go back and look through my notes.
You don't know what country that is? It's only one in the entire world. Guess what? Except for Israel.
Wow. What a segment. What a segment. Prompted by Biden's authorization of $8 billion more to Israel. Now, that was not the first weapon shipment to Israel. It wasn't the first aid package we sent to Israel, but it was the first one that got a segment like this with a week left before he's out of office. And this all becomes Donald Trump's problem. Yeah. You noticed the timeline. So did we. And so did our friend Nick Cruz at RBN. Chris Hayes from MSNBC and 60 Minutes are finally running scathing segments explaining how Biden enabled a genocide in Gaza. How sick is it that liberal culture waited until after the election, when Biden and Democrats stood no chance at winning, to expose this. How evil is Chris Hayes for endorsing and going to bat for genocide Joe Biden, despite knowing all of his crimes? He continues, one of the reasons I believe liberal media is covering this now is they are furious at Joe Biden. First, they were upset he didn't drop out earlier. Now Biden is saying if he stayed in, he would have won. This infuriated the liberal class. Now they are okay with destroying his legacy. I do think there is no love left for Joe Biden amongst these people. That's why notice you're not seeing, as the final days of his presidency wind down, you're not seeing the puff pieces about a career in service. No, I think Nick is 100% right about that.
It's like Joe Biden's arms reaching out to America.
Yeah, right, exactly. None of that. No more of that. No, they have had it with this guy. He burned their bridge with them. But it's true, man. It's true. Now you see, all of a sudden now, CBS and MSNBC doing pieces like this.
Yeah.
Now, look, I'd rather those stories exist than not. But these State Department officials resigned over the past year. They didn't all walk out the door last week.
Yeah.
These stories have been out there. Notice these stories were not featured in mainstream outlets until now. We were covering this. We covered when Josh Paul quit. I don't remember the other two, but I know we did, by name at least, but I know we did a few other stories about State Department officials leaving. Like, this has been an ongoing story for the past year. This has been happening. And now with a week left, they sit these people down and look, the interviews are damning. They're damning. Josh Paul goes and says, we were given not even 24 hours to greenlight aid packages when Israel needed them. You have the first woman there talking about how basically her reports were censored, right? Basically, they didn't want to see the pictures of dead children or fragments of explosives next to children after a bomb was dropped. You even saw the third guy, Andrew Miller, talk about, yes, they used 2,000-pound bombs to kill one or two people who they wanted to, not giving a fuck who else was killed in the blast. That we saw that in November. That was too bad for even Wolf Blitzer to take. I forget who the guy was who he interrogated, but that was a strike that killed, I believe it was about 300 people in order to target one Hamas commander who Israel said they thought they got but never provided any evidence for. The point is, these horrors were ongoing, and now you're seeing segments like this after it's too late to hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire or the Democrats' feet to the fire. Now, as the changing of the guards approaches, now they're finally able to tell the truth. Again, I'd rather have these segments out there than not, but it really just does show you where their priorities lie, because these were truths that were unfolding throughout the past year. They didn't just drop on Sunday.
I think Nick's on the right track there, but whenever you see the whole, and I don't think he would disagree with this, whenever you see the whole media all at once make a shift like this, I'm sorry. I believe that somebody makes a call. I really do. Like, I believe somebody says, okay, you can take the gloves off, because this happens too often. It happens too often where all of a sudden it happened with the World
World Central Kitchen, yeah.
The World Central Kitchen. All of a sudden, everybody noticed that Israel's committing a genocide, and then they all at once shut up about it again.
Yep.
It's just too coordinated to be completely organic. Yes, of course, you've got a certain timing thing that this administration is coming to an end. But this is a little too coordinated for me to believe that they didn't get some kind of permission to go ahead and go on the warpath like this. So you have to ask yourself, why? Well, I think there's a lot of, and you're seeing this with the Mark Zuckerberg on Rogan in a more trivial realm than this. Everyone sees the momentum shift. They all want to be on the side that's winning. They want to distance themselves from the things that they have supported and been associated with that are deeply unpopular. I think for the Democrats, they're looking to throw Biden under the bus because they're done as a political party. I know a lot of people are saying, well, look how it looked in 1980. Yeah, I'm sorry, this is different. This is different. In my entire life, I've never seen one of the two major parties be so completely discredited and so lacking in any basis for making an argument for its own revival. They are just completely destroyed. And I think in their desperation, they're saying, well, the first thing we have to do is distance ourselves from Joe Biden and put the blame on Joe Biden for all of these horrors of his administration and establish the Democratic Party as a separate thing that was misled.
Was his, basically. That was his.
Like, all of this belongs to Joe Biden.
Let him own all of that. Let him be the poster boy for all of that.
He probably won't live out the year anyway.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
And if he does, he's not going to know what's happening.
Exactly. Bury the party with Uncle Joe. I mean, that does seem to be, what they're doing now. And when you look at, well, this is why I said in the previous segment that, he's really going to go down in history. I mean, it really is starting to get to a point where you're starting to make that comparison to George W. Bush, because look at how quickly, especially if this ceasefire holds, and especially if Israel doesn't get anywhere close to really what they wanted out of this whole war. At that point, it is going to be the mainstream narrative that this was just one of the great crimes against humanity,
of course,
committed for absolutely no reason. Like, there won't even, well, obviously we knew that, but there won't even be like a realpolitik angle, right? Like, if this ends on terms that are not even favorable to Israel, then even the Atlantic Council is going to have a hard time justifying this to itself and to its list of future invitees. Right? Like, even if you are a bloodless, just New World Order ghoul who has no human concern for the Palestinians or the Ukrainians or the Russians or anybody, it's going to be impossible to view these past 4 years as anything but a bloodbath that was entirely in vain. They won't even be able to justify it to themselves. Remember when Madeleine Albright, they said, were the sanctions on Iraq worth killing 500,000 kids? And she said yes.
Oh, I think they were, yeah.
Yeah. In her mind, she could say yes. In her mind, obviously no sane and decent person would say yes, but she could justify that to herself. I don't think they're going to be able to even justify these past 4 years to themselves, given how all of this is unfolding, given if, and big if, obviously, if this ceasefire unfolds the way it looks like it's on track to, if the Ukraine war ends on terms that it looks like it's on track to, how do you look back at this with anything but eternal shame? Yeah. And how do you revive the reputations of people who had anything to do with it? Which is why I think you're right. They're going to try and just package this with Biden and just bury it and see if they can move on in some way.
Right. Which also means, and that was already a foregone conclusion, Kamala's illusions of a comeback.
Right.
Nobody associated with this administration has a future.
Exactly. Agreed. Kit's Corner, say what you want about climate change, that the outcomes are just faulty policies, and in our case is higher taxes. Carbon taxes are going, jump food prices up another 5% by spring. Thank you, Kit's Corner. Kawaii Cowboy, I don't know what that says. The environment is a friendly, comical awkwardness of finding yourself a guest in a stranger's house. Luigi fan art is popular, but it's not overly political. Thank you, Kawaii Cowboy. Appreciate that. Crystal Waters, all the Dems libs who claim to want a ceasefire must be celebrating on Blue Sky because they're completely absent from X. MAGA for Palestine. That's MAGA for Palestine, Crystal Waters. Hey, Crystal. It's a good day for you, Crystal Waters. Congratulations to you. Doc Durkin, Blinken's a demon, a succubus, a soul-sucking Nosferatu. Thank you, Doc Durkin. Blinken and Guantanamo Bay seem like a winning combination to me. Thank you, Siddhartha Vicious. Appreciate that very much. Blinken is Joe Biden's Dick Cheney. Yeah, good analogy. Even George W. Bush didn't have the exact mental agility to push the Iraq war, just like the movie Vice. Yes, good observation. Good point. I agree. Let's see. We got Giromide over here. Blinken pivots to influencing in the private sector the old-fashioned way. Several think tank gigs and corporate board seats. Yes, thank you, Giromide. Appreciate that. Jay Tolbert, thanks for the donation. Allowing U.S. missiles to strike Russian territory automatically makes you worse than Bush. There's a seat in hell with his name on it. Thank you, Jay Tolbert. Posmo, Biden was the worst even on his own imperial terms. Push China, Russia together. Yes, that's another good point. Genocide, NATO fracturing, BRICS rising. Arabia, Turkey told the U.S. to sit and spin. Iraq war, Vietnam weren't as damaging. Yeah, I think there's a case to be made. I really do. I mean, that's why I went there. So, yes, I appreciate that comment. I think that there's definitely a case to be made for what you're saying there, 100%. MedWeb, thanks for the $4.99. Here come the bullets. 1, 2, 3. It's all part of my genocide. Netanyahu shortly after agreeing to a ceasefire. All right. Well, we're getting to that right now. This is the moment we've been waiting for today. Let me just check the Twitter machine to make sure that there's not anything.
They've been saying today, yeah.
What's that?
They've been saying it would happen today.
Yeah. So we're just waiting for the announcements. I'm not seeing anything official yet, so we're going to have to go with what we got, but we'll obviously have more on this tomorrow and Thursday, obviously. So the huge news of the day, well, whatever happens to the ceasefire, it is, of course, news that this deal came to be through a strong-arm move by Donald Trump. And so that is sort of the focus of this piece here. So go ahead, take it away.
All right. The best reporting on this really is Haaretz. And it's funny. You want to see how things get slanted in the American media. In the Wall Street Journal, Trump's fixer that he sent over there that basically told everybody to go get their shine box gets along well with the Israeli delegation. Right. So let's go to the Israeli source, Haaretz. Trump's Mideast envoy forced Netanyahu to accept a Gaza plan he repeatedly rejected. Last Friday evening, Stephen Witkoff, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, called from Qatar to tell Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's aides that he would be coming to Israel the following afternoon. The aides politely explained that was in the middle of the Sabbath, but that the Prime Minister would gladly meet him Saturday night. Witkoff's blunt reaction took them by surprise. He explained to them in salty English that Shabbat was of no interest to him. His message was loud and clear. Thus, in an unusual departure from official practice, the Prime Minister showed up at his office for an official meeting with Witkoff, who then returned to Qatar to seal the deal.
See, that's some alpha art of the deal shit there.
Yeah, fucking Sabbath, all right? How much money we give you? How much money we give? You get in that office now!
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I'm not fucking interested in your fucking Sabbath. I mean, that is, look, if you talk about, like, subtly alpha moves that you can make on a negotiating adversary, you know, call them up, say, we have to meet Saturday night. That's the only time I have, Saturday night. That puts them on their heels from moment one.
Yeah. A week before Trump's inauguration, Jerusalem already sees a change in the rules of the game that has broken the deadlock in the hostage negotiations. Unusually, the outgoing Biden administration has let Witkoff lead the process on the grounds that any obligations the United States undertakes will be incumbent on Trump, not on Biden. Witkoff is a Jewish real estate investor and developer who is close to Trump. He doesn't have the background of the kind of people who usually fill diplomatic roles. Quote, Witkoff isn't a diplomat. He doesn't talk like a diplomat. He has no interest in diplomatic manners and diplomatic protocols, says a senior Israeli diplomat who spoke on condition of anonymity. He's a businessman who wants to reach a deal quickly and charges ahead unusually aggressively. Yeah, get the fuck out of here with your payas and come on. I see enough of that in the Diamond District.
I can't wait to see Rappaport's take on this. He's going to feel really betrayed. On the Sabbath, no doubt. On the Sabbath, no
on the
less. You
Sabbath.
fuck. You call us in on the fucking Sabbath and make us sign a ceasefire on the fucking Sabbath of all nights, you fuck. I always knew you were a fucking pig dick motherfucker. This is why I never fucking liked you in the first fucking place. I voted for you because of fucking Sleepy Joe and his fucking pro-Hamas Kamala fucking Harris. But now you remind me why I always fucking hated you in the first fucking place.
Now they're closing down all the glory holes in Gaza already.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
In fact, Witkoff has forced Israel to accept a plan that Netanyahu had repeatedly rejected over the past half year. Hamas has not budged from its position that the hostages' freedom must be conditioned on the release of Palestinian prisoners, the easy part, and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, the hard one. Netanyahu rejected this condition, and thus was born the partial deal proposed by Egypt. Initially, the talk was of a limited humanitarian deal. More and more conditions were slowly appended until it grew into a much bigger proposal with clear outlines: a hostage release, new regional arrangements, and full withdrawal. The Philadelphia corridor, which Netanyahu last summer termed the bedrock of Israel's existence, is part of the deal. At Egypt's request, Israel will fully withdraw from it in the first phase. Now, I'm just going to say there was another follow-up article from Haaretz that dropped today, is scathing about Netanyahu, that claims that Netanyahu's argument that the corridor was so vital to Israel was always a red herring to keep the war going. It's hard to know how Netanyahu feels about this aggressive behavior. While it provides an excuse he can give to his base, he may resent being dragged into an unwanted deal that will end the war and possibly lead to political upheaval at home. His propaganda machine is pushing the no-choice narrative that it's Trump. On Monday, laments began to be heard on Channel 14 that Trump isn't what we thought. I'm surprised all the senior officials in the U.S. administration are saying the same thing, Yotam Zimri said on the Patriots program. Quote, if this doesn't happen by the time Trump comes in, Hamas will understand what hell is. I don't understand the Israeli interest in at least not waiting for Trump. Yenan Magal answered, it's because Trump is pressing to do it. That's what's happening. So this is how sick a society this is. You've got this person saying, why don't we wait for Trump? He promised hell. He promised hell on that. They haven't suffered enough hell yet. They haven't suffered enough hell. Let's hold out.
Yeah, no, they were all excited that he won. We knew they wanted him to
bring hell.
Win.
Yeah.
Right.
Zimri. So all his people have been lying. It's a big disappointment. Magal. He talks about hell and in the meantime sends his envoy to sign a deal. It's a deal whose impact will be very difficult. That's the truth. He added that the last remaining hope is that Hamas will reject a deal. Quote, a cabinet minister told me we need to pray again that God will harden Pharaoh's heart.
Wow.
Yes, if anyone familiar with the biblical story, the Pharaoh kept wanting to make a deal, and God, to make a point, would use his Jedi mind trick on him to make him not make a deal. Monday morning, another Netanyahu mouthpiece, Jacob Bardugo, said, the pressure Trump is exerting right now is not the kind that Israel expected from him. The pressure is the essence of the matter.
Well, what did we say in the last, sorry to pause this for a minute, but what did we say in our last segment, which we just dropped today as a clip, when Trump shared that video of Jeffrey Sachs? We said he probably wants to make a deal before he's sworn in, because he sees this whole thing.
He doesn't want to own it
as a giant liability. And at the time, it didn't look like that was going to do anything, but apparently times have changed.
Times have changed. They sent a fixer. They sent a New Yorker. Hey, it's your fucking Sabbath.
On the Sabbath, no doubt.
So, yeah. Stick those matzo balls up your ass, all right?
Yeah.
There's a long flight. We're getting this done. All right. So, case in point, Israeli media is crystal clear. This is from Mohammed Shahada, put this together. All it took to get a ceasefire deal done was pressure from Trump on Netanyahu, who folded immediately. Biden refused to do that for 15 months.
Yep.
As a Saudi diplomat told me, Biden considered any pressure on Israel as tainting his legacy. Wow. Wow.
It just goes to show you how inflexible they are in their thinking. It's truly, in that sense, it really is the banality of evil, because they just saw support for Israel as being non-negotiable, permanent, inevitable, unchangeable, unconditional. This is the way things have to be, and so we have to pursue this course. And what we're seeing now is that actually the United States held the cards all along, and this war continued for all this time because Biden wanted
the country couldn't exist without us.
Of course, and that this war continued because Biden wanted it to. He supported it. He supported it. Plain and fucking simple.
Right. And Harris promised to continue to support it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get into that.
She wouldn't have sent the guy in on the Sabbath. She can't even get Doug Emhoff to eat her pussy on the Sabbath.
Yeah. Of course. They have to respect cultures and religions and traditions, right? So here to focus in on one of the things he shared, Netanyahu didn't want to end up like Canada or spend his retirement in Greenland. Netanyahu has convinced himself to accept Trump's outline, which was already being considered in May. We'll get into that too. All that remains is to mourn the lost time, the hostages who were murdered in captivity, and the fighters who were killed in vain. A lot of people are making that point on this side of the ocean too. Here's Glenn Greenwald shared this. This is going around a lot. We're not going to show the video because I haven't been able to find anybody who's made a subtitled version.
If you have ADD like me, that video will give you a meltdown. It's like impossible to keep up with what he's saying. And like the auto-generated Twitter subtitles don't even keep up with what he's saying.
All right, so Greenwald here says, Israel extremists on television are blaming Trump for what they say is the imminent ceasefire deal in Gaza, claiming that Trump forced the deal on Netanyahu without first letting Israel completely annex northern Gaza and block all humanitarian aid from entering. And according to the translation here, what this figure is saying, stunned like the true believer he is, Netanyahu proxy Errol Segal laments, quote, "We're the first to pay a price for Trump's election. We all thought it was going to be the transies. First they came for the transies. We said nothing. The deal
Why
is
don't
being...
you worry about the men in the women's sports?
The men, they're swimming in the pool with the women. The deal is being forced upon us. We thought we'd take control of northern Gaza, that they'd let us impede humanitarian aid. How sick a society do you have to have that a person could go on TV and say something like that, not have it be the end of their public life?
Right, of course.
For that to be a sensible thing to say. We were hoping he was going to let us kill everybody. Horrible. Right. So speaking of, is kind of a side note on this story, genocidal psychopath Ben-Gvir boasted of blocking the Gaza hostage deal time and time again. It was supposed to be Hamas, right? It was Hamas that was stopping the deal. But here's the truth. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir admitted in a post on X Twitter on Tuesday that his party had prevented a hostage deal from being achieved on numerous occasions. Quote, "In the past year, through our political power, we succeeded in preventing this deal from moving forward time and time again," he noted. According to Ben-Gvir, additional elements have since joined the government and now support the deal, and we no longer hold the balance of power. Ben-Gvir's remarks were made as part of his call to Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, What would they do without their big book of rejected Star Wars names?
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
To leave the government if a hostage deal would be approved. The additional element in question is the United Right Party, which increased the size of the coalition from 64 to 68 members of the Knesset. This means that Ben-Gvir and his 6 MKs are no longer the difference makers. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich together, however, pose a credible threat to the government, and the combined threat could hamper Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's motivation to see the deal through. I don't think it's going to go that way, but okay. An Israeli official said in response to Ben-Gvir's comments, quote, contrary to Minister Ben-Gvir's claims, the only party that has managed to prevent a hostage release deal since November 2023 is the Hamas terror organization, which has remained obstinate, just as senior American officials have repeatedly stated. Now, all of the reporting that we have, and we're going to see this in some of the tweets that have gone out, is that Hamas essentially agreed to this deal a year ago. Same exact deal that they're going to
and if you remember just the last article you read there, where one of the people I don't recall their name said, well, now we just have to pray that Hamas rejects the deal, right? Because now our arm has been twisted. It had always been Israel rejecting the deals. There had been several full hostage exchange on the table that Israel rejected all along.
Right.
Now that their arm was twisted into saying yes, now they have to hope the other side says no. That's almost not that. I mean, that's not going to happen.
No.
Right. New York Times now reporting in its final. Washington Post now reporting. Israel-Gaza ceasefire deal and hostage release in final stages, according to Qatar. So it looks like it is very, very close to official.
Yeah, I mean, reading between, you can tell if you're kind of a news junkie which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah,
I mean, I would have been very surprised if it didn't happen. Yeah. Meetings are set to be held during the day in Qatar to finalize the deal. Now, this is interesting. On Tuesday afternoon, Religious Zionist Party coordinator M.K. Ohad Tal said in a speech at an event called the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast at President-elect Donald Trump's estate at Mar-a-Lago that Trump, quote, should not support a deal that will lead this total evil of Hamas in power, not to support a deal that will leave behind a vast majority of hostages. Apparently, I think in the first phase, it's 33 hostages to be released.
But they're all to be released as it phases out.
As it phases in, right? But the first phase is 33. Okay, so
but they're probably afraid of. Sorry to cut you off. They're probably afraid. What if the 33 get out and Netanyahu breaks the ceasefire? Then what happens? That could be a concern.
Sure. So there has been quite a lot of reaction on this. So Prem Thacker here. Almost 11 months ago, this is from a CNN article, U.S. President Joe Biden said that he hopes there will be a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict by next Monday, as the death toll in Gaza approaches 30,000, according to health officials.
I remember that story very well.
Yep. Point being, this could have been done 11 months ago if Joe Biden had just sent some New York real estate guy who didn't give a shit about the Sabbath.
Yep.
Ryan Grimm, this deal has been available at least since May, arguably since last November after the first prisoner exchange. Every hostage who has died since, every Palestinian killed or who died of malnutrition or a treatable disease is a direct result of Biden's refusal to force the deal. I hope he's cognizant enough to understand how fully he has been exposed by Donald Trump as a mass murdering fanatic.
That's the sweet justice in all this, man. I mean, they are just what utter devastation. I mean, the libs are just in. You talk about shambles. This is shambles.
It's shambolic.
Yeah.
Jeremy Scahill. Important to note, the Gaza ceasefire deal that may be reached soon is overwhelmingly consistent with the deal Hamas officially agreed to on July 2nd. Biden allowed Netanyahu to torch that deal and continue the genocide with a steady flow of U.S. weapons and political support. This is Afif Akrabawi. Every Kamala Harris supporter who gaslit, bullied, and silenced Palestinians through their own genocide, reveling in smug threats of Trump being worse, can burn in the very hell they helped create.
Yes.
Trump is brokering a ceasefire before he's even back in the White House.
Amen. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, that's it. How many people, tried to browbeat the abandoned Harris people into saying, you're only making it worse.
Well, Uncommitted made that whole video that they almost certainly got paid for by the DNC.
Yep.
Sabby, if Trump accomplishes a ceasefire in Gaza, the Democratic Party is done. We'll have to wait to see if it happens, but if it does, I don't see how Dems come back from this. I'm singing that song. Bikram Gill, looks like a vote for Kamala Harris really was a vote for continuing the genocide and Holocaust in Gaza. What a permanent indictment this is on U.S. liberalism and the Democratic Party. You have officially shown yourselves to be more genocidal than Trump.
100%.
Is not a Trump fan here. Medea Benjamin, I pray that we wake up tomorrow to a ceasefire deal. It appears to be virtually the same deal Hamas accepted months ago. The new element is Trump, who insisted that Netanyahu take the deal, something Biden never did. Biden leaves a legacy of genocide.
Yep.
And just a comment here. This is what we, who have been speaking out against this, have been saying. I mean, it didn't take any great foreign policy insight to say we are funding and equipping this genocide. Just with a word from the United States, it will end. Oh, no, it's complicated. No, it's really not more complicated than that. Clearly, it is not more complicated than that. Donald Trump is not even in office yet. He sent a real estate guy, got Netanyahu before him on the carpet on the Sabbath, told him, you're going to sign that paper. You're going to sign that paper. You're going to have trouble. That's it. Days.
That's
Within
it.
days. Over.
Yep.
All right. So Mehdi Hassan jumping out in front of the parade like so many people are trying to do now. Some of us said a year ago that the U.S. president has the power to impose a deal and a ceasefire on Netanyahu and Israel. Well, true enough. If President-elect Trump can do it, Biden could have done it for the past year. Shame on him and Blinken and the rest of them. Well, that's all well and good, but as our friend Anya Parampil points out, Mehdi supported Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. Here she says, I'm blocked, so please remind Mehdi Hassan that he spent the better part of last year telling us to vote for the woman serving Biden as he oversaw the slaughter of Gaza. Anyone who was scared into voting against Trump voted against this deal, period. Some of us said a year ago that a vote for Harris was a vote for more death. Amen, Anya. Amen. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see, I was thinking already, Emma Vigeland tries to suggest that there was Nixonian or Reagan-esque secret agreement with Trump and Netanyahu, and that to not have a deal in order to hurt Harris's presidential chances. There's absolutely no indication of that in the reporting. That is a very good example of how these supposedly independent podcasters in the end function as Democrat Party shills. It is very, very obvious that the fault for this lays with Joe Biden. You cannot twist this into, oh, yeah, well, really? Trump kept it going. No. No, Biden kept it going. And Trump said, hey, you know what? I don't need that kind of trouble. I don't need that kind of trouble. I want this over before my inauguration. That's it.
Yep. And I'm sure that, they dangled a few carrots in front of them, some items on Miriam Adelson's wish list. I'm sure they're going to get immunity. They're like the report said that I mentioned, a few segments back. They could protect them from the ICC. They could try and sanction countries that try to enforce the ICC ruling. I'm sure they will back them on their territorial ambitions in Syria. I'm sure, it looks like they want a war with Iran in this term. We hope that doesn't happen. We will see if that happens. I don't think it is fair to assume that Israel gets the total shaft, but, and this is what we said last time, I don't think Trump wants this on his hands when he takes office. He does not want this on his hands. That's why I don't think he wanted Netanyahu at the inauguration next week. This is a huge political liability for him. I think that's how he sees it, and I think he wanted it wrapped up, and he figured, hey, let me take my best shot at this, and it worked. It worked. It seems to have worked. Now, what the next phase of this war entails, which is the expansion of Greater Israel, now that that's underway, we will have to wait and see. I don't want to be too rosy-eyed and say we're completely out of the woods here, because we're not. But obviously, a huge step that should have been taken a year ago. It wasn't, because Joe Biden and this is who the blame lies with, wanted this war to go on.
Right.
Whatever you could say, you could try and spin this however you want. You can try and say, well, he felt this, that way. In effect, this is Biden's war.
Well,
he wanted
the people around Biden. I mean, who knows?
Well,
he's
the
Biden
president.
decided,
I mean, obviously,
right?
I think Anthony Blinken was calling the shots, but whatever.
Right.
The history books will say this was Biden's war. This was
Right.
Biden's genocide. It could have stopped at any time, and it didn't because ultimately he did not have the will to make that happen. Which, in plain English, means he didn't want to. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And we've gotten some indication with Mehdi Hassan. Me too. Forget about the fact that I was pushing the Harris candidacy. And we've gotten some indication with Vigland trying to suggest a secret deal with absolutely no evidence. But I am really curious to see how all the scumbags in our space who, as soon as Harris picked Tim Walz, decide to scream about the free school lunches and pretend that there was any reason to believe she was going to be better on this issue, substantively better on this issue, when she emphatically promised to continue to arm Israel. Emphatically.
Yeah, well, there was no end in sight with this under Kamala, which is why I made the analogy that I made. I said Trump is you're playing Russian roulette with one chamber empty. Right. You know, and for every 6 shots you fire, you're gonna get a free pass on one of them. You know, with them there was no chance.
With Harris, it was very clear. It was just for one thing, it was very clear that the intention with Harris was to continue what they had with Biden, which was basically to not have a president, so that they could just continue to run the country through a figurehead. So
of course.
They would have
kept a lot of the same people. They'd have probably kept Anthony Blinken as Secretary of State.
There would have been
kept
absolutely no change in policy. At least with Trump, you had some kind of a chance, however small. And as you point out, there is some reporting that the fix is in, that this is for show, that later on there will be a ceasefire broken. We'll see. I mean, if that's how it goes at that point, I mean, you know us, we'll cover it without any fear or favor.
Yeah,
But
we were very pessimistic about this. I did not think that this was
we
going to
have always said
happen.
we would be fair.
Yeah.
And hey, man, he gets this done. He deserves a lot of credit. If it turns out to be a feint and this starts up 2 weeks later again, we'll be there. But
of course,
I'm not going to beat him up on something he hasn't done. If he actually gets this done, whatever his motivations, whatever his reasons, hey, we know with Harris, Greater Israel, absolutely, no question about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be clear, I still think you're looking at Greater Israel, but I think, you know, in terms of the Gaza ceasefire, I think the prospects for that are, you know, at least, you know, now you seem to have one very, very close to on the table.
Right.
I still think there's going to be major land grabs in the West Bank, major land grabs in Syria, and don't forget these things can turn violent, and then you can have another war on your hands.
Yep.
So I'm not suggesting that. Like I said,
we're going to cover it.
Absolutely. Like I said, I don't want to paint a picture that we're out of the woods and it's blue skies as far as the eye can see. Far from that. And by the way, there's still justice that needs to be done for Gaza.
Well, this is the next thing for people in our space, because we cannot forgive, we cannot forget. One of my personal objectives in life is to do whatever I can to dismantle the Israeli state as it exists, as a genocidal state with apartheid policies.
Right.
Elevating organizations that share that aim through boycott, through divestment, through sanctions. We are going to continue to support that, whatever happens with this, and we're going to continue to highlight it. But for the sake of these poor people in Gaza, we just, I mean, this is a good thing. When other bad things happen down the line, we'll report on them. But after unrelenting grimness in this area since October 7th, which we've reported on pretty much every show we've done, there's been almost no show since then. We have not reported on this. It's nice to maybe see some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just, obviously, we hope it goes through. We hope it's not broken. We hope there's aid that gets in. I mean, there's so much that has to happen even after a ceasefire. You're talking about a place that's in complete ruins. You're talking about famine.
There's nothing left from what we've seen.
Contaminated water. There's nothing left. Right. So even in Gaza, you're not out of the woods. But this is at least a moment for air. It's a breath that you can take and say, okay, let's see what we could do. And look, this is a job, look, if Trump is successful in securing this ceasefire because he feels that this is a real liability, and I think that's where he's coming from, he has a job to do to try and bring, Trump's not going to deliver justice for Palestine. I'm not on that page that he's equipped to do that. But
no.
You have to do more than just a ceasefire, too. I mean, the ceasefire is only step one. You got to rebuild Gaza. You have to have some sort of a plan to do that and get aid to people. You have people starving. You have water undrinkable. You have major shelter crisis. You have a healthcare system that's been completely decimated. To have the onslaught stop is obviously, I mean, it goes without saying. It almost sounds stupid to say a crucial and necessary step one, but it is a step one. Right. And it's going to require, proactive engagement to give these people a life back. And ultimately, to give them a life back means a free Palestine. Because we knew on October 7th why that happened. We knew what the conditions were leading up to that. And we knew that, these people had been living, the status quo was bordering on genocide. This is why we said, as soon as Netanyahu came out that morning and put that video out and said that the enemy will know an unprecedented response, anyone who had a cursory knowledge of the subject matter, which is all I really had of it, but I had enough knowledge to know that that could only mean genocide. There's no way that could mean anything but genocide, because they had walked the line right up to that point until then over the past several decades. And so now you finally get a breath of air. And that is the first step. That is the first step. We have to hope it holds, and we have to go from there. But yeah, this is something that would not have happened under Harris, at least not in the first couple of years.
No way.
You would have just had Israel just roll right through there.
Yep.
Roll right through. And there would have been a ceasefire when there's literally no one left.
Yep.
That's what you would have had under Kamala Harris. So that's the coverage. That's the coverage. All right, before we leave, folks, we're going to take the remainder of Super Chats and Rumble Rants. But please like this stream, and please subscribe to the channel. Please follow the channel over on Rumble. Let's see here where we got...
Candace Owens dropped the real news, man. Justin Bieber unfollowed Usher.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, there you go.
Apparently.
Breaking. Breaking. Yeah. Hold on. Stop everything. Let's see.
And Li Fong just dropped something. This might be good for tomorrow. There's a nice jujitsu move. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau proposed stronger protections against debanking as a censorship issue. So how do they handle that?
Oh, there you go.
That's smart. That was smart kung fu.
All right. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Eric Morrison, no risk of damaging Biden campaign, cover genocide. There you go. That's right. Pete Sweet, member for 19 months. Thanks, Pete Sweet. Glad to be rid of Blinken's cold, black, soulless, shark-eyed stare. Genocide has no statute of limitations for these war criminals. Absolutely. Spinelli, thanks for the $30. That's kind of you. The resisting Gaza always wanted attrition. If not for the genocide, they would not take a ceasefire. They're still growing. In the last 10 days, Al-Qassam launched over 20 of the largest missiles and got direct hits. Yemen, no need, stage 7. Well, as Blinken said in his final speech, or one of his final speeches as chief diplomat, Israel lost. They lost. If they accept this, if they accept this deal, that is a major strategic defeat for them on the Gaza front. Now, like I say, I got to be very specific about that because there are other wheels in motion in terms of annexation of the West Bank, which is on the list for them to get done in 2025. Also, the fall of Assad in Syria leaves open the potential for major gains for Israel. So I'm not saying that, unfortunately, I'm not saying that it's a total defeat geopolitically. But in terms of Gaza, yeah, it's a loss. It's a loss. They failed. The core objective was a failure if they take this deal. And it looks like they got strong-armed on one Saturday afternoon into taking that deal. And after 15 months of us being gaslit into saying, no, it can't happen. Can't happen.
Yep.
Landrew, thanks for the $100. Let's have a sound drop for Landrew and a cowbell for Landrew. Thank you very much, Landrew. Appreciate that. It looks like I might have to eat shit over Trump being anything positive for Palestine. Gulp, gulp, free Palestine. Thank you, Landrew.
I am Landrew. Landrew is dead.
Hey, look, what did we say? We said we did not see any reason for optimism, and we hope to God we're wrong. So if for today we're wrong, we're happy to be wrong.
Yep.
John M. in Minnesota, former UN official Craig Mochaber has made the argument that U.S. media personnel can be prosecuted for inciting genocide. It was stated during the 60 Minutes report that the footage was filmed in May. They held it for 8 months. Wow. Thank you, John. Appreciate that very much.
Yep.
John Kwasny, our evil C words, got nothing on your evil C words in the U.S. Ours will kill you, but they make you fill out a questionnaire and sign a release. There you go. We should have every once in a while, we should do a chat game. Rumble or YouTube. We'll just read we'll read a chat, and we won't tell you where it's from, and you'll have to guess where it's from. On Red Note, a lot of Gen Z are referring to themselves as TikTok refugees. Some are learning Mandarin on the app out of spite, and we're even helping Chinese kids with their English homework. LOL. There you go. Beautiful. Love to see it.
Funny.
Watching an hour behind, but enjoying the Gen Z love in the Red Note segment. We really are the best at trolling. Yep, you guys are great.
Boom.
The kids are all right, as they say.
We're gonna be the first podcast to have a chief of trolling department.
Yeah, right. yeah, exactly. Yes, that's on our list for the year. Monkey Rotary, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for that. Good morning, wherever you are. Nina Kant, remember how fast Reagan got it? Unbelievable. Biden, actually totally believable. There you go. Well, with Reagan, I do believe that there was
Reagan.
The
they had a deal.
They did rig it,
and so did Nixon and Kissinger.
Yeah.
But Emma Vigeland, that is a demonstration of what scumbags these DNC far progressives are. That everyone else is saying, see, Biden could have wrapped it up, and she finds the way to spin it to make it a negative on Trump, and Biden was just a victim.
Yeah, so listen, Bibi, here's what I need from you. I need you to keep the war going until I win, and then after I win, I'm going to make you lose. I'm going to make it so you lose you lose the war. How's that sound?
And that sounds wonderful. Just remember,
great.
I have only green M&Ms in my dressing room every time.
Right. Exactly. Crystal Waters, Crystal Ball, Bad Crystal, said on Breaking Points, Trump and Bibi pulling a Reagan hostage deal. She nor Miami Cokehead Kyle nor those chicks on Vanguard are celebrating yet. WTF. Did Crystal say that too? Russell was telling me that Emma said that. I didn't know.
I saw that tweeted out from Emma. So this is the far progressive take.
That's the take.
That there was a secret deal with no evidence at all. None. Yeah. Zero. Just gonna say shit. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean all the evidence points in the other direction. I mean, here's the thing.
If there was evidence for it, we'd pursue it. I mean, they're literally pulling that out of their asses. Mm-hmm. There's not one shred of evidence for it.
Yeah,
quite the contrary.
Something to go on, right? If you're gonna go with that, exactly. Absolutely. There's growing worry within PA that Fatah military wing and Hamas military wing want to get rid of Palestinian Authority due to their lack of action and violent raids on Palestinians. I have seen some reporting on that as well. Thank you, GHU81. Appreciate that. Hey, we appreciate you all being here with us today. That's our show. Thank you for tuning in. We are live tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on the Jimmy Dore Show. We're filling in one more time because Jimmy's still got to get situated out there. Just getting back to, obviously, a pretty chaotic scene. So we are happy to fill in tomorrow. We will be there tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and then back here noon on Thursday. And then we got a busy week next week. We're sending Russell to D.C. for the inauguration. So, hey, if you want to chip into our special projects fund at givesendgo.com/do dissidents, that is what pays for these on-the-ground trips and special projects. Obviously, the inauguration coverage is one this year. We also are going to be at Workers Strike Back in February. And then the big project that we are trying to fundraise towards is our documentary on Uhuru, which we're going to be hopefully producing this summer with your help. So givesendgo.com/do dissidents. Want a special shout out to our friend Landrew, who dropped a very generous donation on there. So thank you, my friend. We really
thank you to
appreciate
everybody who gave.
And to everybody who has given so far. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So that's our show today. Thank you guys very much for being here. Thanks to our YouTubers. Thanks to our Rumblers. We'll see you tomorrow on Jimmy's channel, back here noon Thursday Eastern time on ours. Until then, thanks for being here with us today. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.